At our anniversary dinner, my wife stood with her friends, holding divorce papers. To his new king. They cheered as she slipped an arm around her lovers. I signed quietly, thanked them all, then did something that turned their cheers into stunned silence. If humiliation had a GPS, it would have dropped me right at Maison du Loon, the same overpriced French restaurant where I once got down on one knee and proposed to my wife, Camille. That was 3 years ago, back when I thought love meant something more than a good credit score and a tolerance for her mother's passive-aggressive comments about my potential. Now here I was again, wearing my best navy suit, the one I reserved for funerals and apparently, the death of my marriage. Because if you're going to get publicly humiliated, you might as well look sharp doing it. The invitation had come 2 days prior. "Let's celebrate our anniversary," she'd texted, complete with a champagne emoji that should have been my first red flag. Camille hadn't voluntarily celebrated anything with me since I remembered to take out the trash without being asked, which, according to her, was the bare minimum, not an achievement. But I played along. I RSVP'd with a thumbs-up emoji because that's what emotionally exhausted husbands do. We communicate in symbols because words require effort neither of us had anymore. I arrived exactly on time because punctuality is apparently the only thing I'm good at, according to every performance review Camille had given me over the last 6 months. The hostess, a 20-something with the kind of smile that said she'd seen too many first dates go wrong, led me through the dimly lit dining room. The place smelled like truffle oil and broken dreams, with a soundtrack of soft jazz that was trying way too hard to be sophisticated. I spotted Camille immediately because she'd strategically chosen the table right in the center of the restaurant. Maximum visibility for whatever Fresh Prince of Divorce she was about to perform. She wasn't alone. Of course she wasn't alone. That would have required a shred of decency, and Camille had traded hers in for a yoga membership and a new sense of self-discovery that apparently included discovering other men. Sitting to her right was Becky, her best friend since college and the human equivalent of a car alarm, loud, unnecessary, and somehow always going off at the worst possible moments. Becky was the kind of person who thought saying everything at maximum volume made her more interesting. It didn't. It just made everyone else's ears hurt. She was wearing some sort of sparkly dress that looked like it had been bedazzled by a craft store explosion, and her laugh could probably shatter the wine glasses she was already 3 deep into. Then there was the man. Oh yes, the man. Dylan. I recognized him immediately from Camille's Instagram stories. You know, the one she posted from her business retreat that looked suspiciously like a couple's vacation with someone who definitely wasn't me. Dylan was her yoga instructor, because of course he was. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, and apparently, cheating spouse cliches are its favorite comedy routine. He had that whole, "I'm spiritual and grounded" look going on, man bun, beaded bracelet, the kind of smug expression that suggested he'd never had an original thought in his life, but was really proud of the motivational quotes he reposted. The table was set up like a celebration. There were 3 bottles of wine, 2 already empty, which explained Becky's volume level, and someone had even brought a small bouquet of flowers. How thoughtful. Nothing says, "I'm about to ruin your life," quite like decorative centerpieces. As I approached, Camille raised her glass, and I noticed her nails were a fresh shade of crimson. She'd clearly prepared for this moment like it was a TED Talk on betrayal. "To new beginnings," she announced, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. Her entourage, because apparently this wasn't a divorce announcement, it was a performance, cheered in response. "To his new king," Becky screeched, slapping the table like she'd just delivered the punchline of the century. I stopped walking, blinked, processed. Wait, his. That's when I saw it. Dylan's arm wasn't just near Camille. It was around her, possessively. The way my arm used to be during our engagement photos before I realized I'd signed up for a lifetime subscription to disappointment. He had this satisfied grin on his face, like he'd just won a prize at a carnival. Except the prize was my wife, and the carnival was my life falling apart in real time. Camille reached into her designer purse, the one I'd bought her last Christmas because she'd dropped hints the size of billboard advertisements, and pulled out a crisp manila envelope. She slid it across the table toward me with the kind of dramatic flair usually reserved for soap operas. "Happy anniversary, Milo," she said, and I swear I could hear the satisfaction dripping from every syllable. I picked up the envelope. Opened it. Divorce papers. Neat, organized, already filled out with her lawyer's information prominently displayed at the top. She'd even bookmarked the signature pages with those little sticky tabs. Efficient. I had to give her that. She'd planned my professional destruction with the same energy most people reserved for wedding planning. The table erupted in laughter. Not polite chuckles. Full-blown cackling. Becky was practically crying, mascara starting to run down her face. Dylan was grinning like an idiot, probably mentally composing his next Instagram caption about manifesting abundance or whatever pseudo-spiritual garbage he peddled to lonely housewives. Even the waiter, who'd just arrived with more wine, looked uncomfortable, like he wanted to teleport to literally any other section of the restaurant. This was it. The grand finale. The public execution of Milo Gray, faithful husband, reliable provider, and apparently the world's biggest chump. But here's the thing about being underestimated your entire marriage. People forget you're capable of surprises too. I looked at the papers, looked at Camille, looked at Dylan's stupid man bun. Then I did something that shocked even me. I smiled. Not a sad smile, not a defeated smile. A genuine, almost peaceful smile that came from somewhere deep inside. Probably the part of me that had been screaming for 6 months, but I'd been too polite to acknowledge. I pulled out a pen from my jacket pocket, because I'm nothing if not prepared, and signed every single page. Methodically, calmly, while they all watched, their laughter starting to die down into confused silence. When I finished, I slid the papers back across the table. "Thank you," I said quietly, looking Camille directly in the eyes. "Thank you for the show." Then I stood up, straightened my tie, and did something that made the entire restaurant, the waiters, the other diners, even the pianist in the corner, go completely, utterly, dead silent. But that part, that's a story for another time. 6 months before my wife decided to turn our anniversary into a public roasting session, I was living in what I can only describe as blissful, catastrophic ignorance. You know that feeling when you're watching a horror movie and screaming at the protagonist not to go into the basement? Yeah, I was that idiot, except the basement was my marriage and I was skipping down the stairs humming show tunes. I used to think marriage was teamwork, two people pulling together toward common goals like financial stability, emotional support, and figuring out whose turn it was to clean the bathroom. Turns out, I'd been the only one sweating while Camille had been sitting courtside with a protein shake, watching me run sprints like some kind of matrimonial gym membership she'd forgotten to cancel. It started small, the way most disasters do. Camille began staying late at work. "Big project," she'd say, breezing through the door at 10 p.m. smelling like expensive perfume I definitely hadn't bought her. I'd have dinner waiting, because apparently I'd morphed into a 1950s housewife without the pearls or the satisfaction, and she'd pick at it while scrolling through her phone, laughing at messages she never let me see. "Work stuff?" she'd explain when I'd glance over, curious. "You wouldn't get it. Marketing humor." Right. Because marketing is famously hilarious. Nothing makes people laugh quite like quarterly projections and target demographics. Then came the girls' nights. Every Thursday, like clockwork, Becky would pick her up, honking that obnoxious horn on her white SUV that probably had more monthly payments than my student loans, and Camille would transform. Suddenly, she'd be wearing heels I'd never seen, dresses that still had tags tucked discreetly inside, makeup applied with the precision of a Renaissance painter. For Becky, and whoever else was apparently attending these estrogen conventions. "Don't wait up," she'd call out, already halfway out the door before I could respond. I didn't wait up. I'd sit on the couch with Netflix and our dog, Captain, a 3-year-old golden retriever who was probably the only honest relationship I had left. At least when Captain wanted something, he'd just stare at me and drool. No mind games. No passive-aggressive comments about my career trajectory or why I hadn't hustled my way into upper management yet. "She's just stressed," I'd tell Captain, who would tilt his head like even he wasn't buying it. "Work's been crazy. The merger, remember?" Captain would yawn. He was a better judge of character than I was. I should have known something was wrong when Camille started saying she was finding herself. That's code, by the way. When your spouse says they're finding themselves, what they actually mean is they're finding someone else. But I was supportive, encouraged it, even. Bought her books with titles like Awakening Your Inner Goddess and The Power of Intentional Living, which she'd stack on her nightstand and never read, because self-help books are just decorative items for people who want to look introspective. She joined a gym, then a yoga studio, then a Pilates class. Suddenly, my wife had more workout routines than a Navy SEAL, except instead of getting fit for combat, she was getting fit for, well, I'd find out soon enough. It's important to prioritize wellness. She'd lecture me while I made her post-workout smoothies, kale, spinach, protein powder that tasted like liquidized sadness. You should come with me sometime. Self-care isn't selfish, Milo. I worked 60 hours a week as a project manager at a construction firm, juggling deadlines, angry contractors, and a boss named Gerald who thought motivational speeches involved yelling and veiled threats about job security. My idea of self-care was remembering to eat lunch and not crying in the company bathroom. But sure, Camille, tell me more about prioritizing wellness while I fund your spiritual journey. The real kicker? I thought I was being a good husband. Revolutionary, I know. I did the laundry, folded her clothes the way she liked, shirts faced left, pants folded in thirds, don't even get me started on the sock pairing system, and made sure the house was clean when she got home. I bought flowers every Friday from the grocery store, those prearranged bouquets that cost $12 and scream, I'm trying. I'd leave little notes on the bathroom mirror, have a great day, with a smiley face, because nothing says romance like dry erase markers and forced positivity. I was basically a walking Hallmark card with a mortgage and a 401k I'd been contributing to a loan for the last 8 months. Then came the morning that changed everything. The morning I went from clueless husband to amateur detective faster than you can say, emotional devastation. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were trash days and I'd just dragged 3 bins to the curb, feeling accomplished about my contribution to neighborhood sanitation. Camille was already gone. She'd started leaving earlier and earlier for work, sometimes before sunrise, which should have been suspicious for someone whose job didn't officially start until 9. I was making coffee when I saw it. Her smartwatch, just sitting there on the kitchen counter, charging cable still attached. She'd forgotten it. Camille never forgot her smartwatch. That thing was like a third arm to her, constantly buzzing with notifications, tracking her steps, monitoring her heart rate like she was training for the Olympics instead of attending marketing meetings. The screen lit up. A notification. My eyes were drawn to it automatically, the way you can't help but look at a car crash or a Facebook argument in the comments section. Dylan breathed deep, yoga studio. Great session, babe. Same time tomorrow? Fire, red heart. I stared at that message for a solid 30 seconds. Read it again and again, hoping somehow the words would rearrange themselves into something innocent. Maybe Dylan was a woman. Maybe babe was a term yoga instructors used for all their clients. Maybe the fire emoji and heart emoji were just enthusiastic customer service? Who was I kidding? I picked up the watch, scrolled through the messages with hands that had started shaking somewhere around the second heart emoji. There were dozens, hundreds, maybe, messages spanning weeks. You're amazing. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? And Camille's responses, flirty and eager in a way she hadn't been with me since our honeymoon. And even that was debatable. Dylan. Dylan breathed deep. What kind of name was that? Was Breathe Deep even a real last name, or had he legally changed it for branding purposes? The guy taught yoga for a living and somehow had become the leading man in my wife's secret side quest. Nothing says infidelity quite like a heart emoji after a downward dog. I stood there in my kitchen, coffee forgotten, trash bins successfully on the curb, world successfully imploding, holding evidence of my wife's affair in the palm of my hand. The smartwatch vibrated again. Another message from Dylan. Missing you already, face blowing a kiss. Captain walked over and sat at my feet, sensing something was wrong. He nudged my leg with his nose. Yeah, buddy, I muttered, putting the watch back exactly where I'd found it. Me too. That was the moment. The exact second when Milo Gray, professional doormat and husband of the year, died. And someone new, someone who was done being the punchline, was born. Once you know what you're looking for, the truth stops hiding and starts practically waving at you from across the room. After the smartwatch incident, which I'd mentally filed under things that destroyed my soul before breakfast, I started seeing evidence of Camille's affair everywhere. And I mean everywhere. It was like one of those optical illusion pictures where once someone points out the hidden image, you can't unsee it. Except instead of a dolphin or an old woman's profile, I was seeing betrayal in high definition surround sound, director's cut edition. The late nights suddenly made sense. Those weren't overtime hours at the marketing firm. Camille worked for a mid-sized company that sold organic skincare products to people with too much money and not enough skepticism. They weren't curing cancer. They weren't launching rockets. They were peddling overpriced face cream with names like Youth Elixir and Radiance Serum that probably cost $3 to manufacture and sold for $80. Nobody was staying late for that. Nobody except my wife, apparently, who discovered that Late at the Office was excellent cover for Late at Dylan's apartment doing poses that definitely weren't in any yoga manual. Then there was her phone. The phone that was suddenly more protected than nuclear launch codes. She'd changed her passcode. I noticed because I tried to use it one morning when mine was dead and I needed to check my work email. 6 attempts later, after trying every combination of important dates I could remember, I was locked out and she was giving me a lecture about privacy and boundaries and personal space. "It's not that I don't trust you," she'd said, which is what people say right before explaining exactly why they don't trust you. "It's just that everyone deserves their own private space, even in marriage." Sure, Camille. Privacy. That's definitely what you need it for. Not to hide the 17,000 messages from some guy named Dylan who thinks namaste is a personality trait. Her phone was always face down now, always on silent. And she'd developed this nervous habit of checking it every 30 seconds like she was waiting for news about a hostage situation. Which, in a way, I guess she was. Except the hostage was our marriage and the ransom note was written in heart emojis. The scented candles were new too. Suddenly our bedroom smelled like a Bath and Body Works had exploded. Vanilla bourbon, eucalyptus mint, something called Midnight Jasmine that cost $45 and came in a glass jar you could probably use as a weapon. I'd come home to find them burning on every surface, creating this whole aromatherapy situation that I definitely hadn't requested. "It's for ambience," Camille explained when I asked. "For relaxation. You should try being more mindful, Milo. Not everything needs a practical purpose." Right. Except these candles did have a practical purpose, covering up the fact that she'd been testing them out somewhere else first. Probably at Dylan's place, which I imagined looked like a Pottery Barn catalog threw up in a meditation center. I'd bet money he had a salt lamp, multiple salt lamps, and one of those water fountains that's supposed to bring positive energy, but really just makes you need to pee. But the real evidence? The stuff that would hold up in court if marriage had a justice system? That came from the lingerie. I discovered it by accident. I was putting away laundry, because of course I was. That's what I did. I was the laundry fairy, and I found a receipt in the pocket of one of Camille's blazers. Victoria's Secret. $347. $347 for underwear that probably used less fabric than a handkerchief. Now, I'm not a fashion expert. My idea of dressing up involves pants without elastic waistbands. But I knew one thing for certain. None of that lingerie had made an appearance in our bedroom. I would have remembered. Our intimate life had become about as exciting as watching paint dry, except less colorful and somehow more depressing. We hadn't had what you'd call relations in weeks, maybe months. I'd stopped counting because keeping track of rejection is bad for mental health. So where was all this fancy underwear going? It sure as hell wasn't for my benefit. I kept quiet. This is important. I didn't confront her, didn't cry, didn't throw things or demand explanations, or do any of the dramatic stuff you see in movies where the betrayed spouse has a public meltdown and smashes dishes. That's amateur hour. That's what she'd expect. That's what would make her the victim in the story she'd already started writing in her head. No, I played it cool, smiled, acted normal. Why ruin her fun when I could be planning mine? She thought I was clueless. Thought I was just dumb, reliable Milo who'd keep doing laundry and making smoothies and pretending everything was fine while she lived her best life with some guy who probably introduced himself as a wellness coach and had opinions about chakras. It was cute, really, watching her think she was getting away with it. Meanwhile, I became Sherlock Holmes with a Wi-Fi connection. I had access to our bank accounts, joint finances, the dream of every couple that thinks they'll last forever. I started checking our credit card statements with the dedication of a forensic accountant. And let me tell you, the story they told was better than any mystery novel. Charges at hotels I'd never been to. The Riverside Inn. The boutique on 5th. Places with names that promised discretion and probably had hourly rates even though they pretended not to. $200 here, $300 there, all on our shared card, because apparently Camille's affair needed my financial contribution to really thrive. Restaurants I'd never eaten at. Expensive ones. The kind where the menu doesn't have prices and you need a second mortgage to afford the wine list. Fleming's Steakhouse, $283. Catch Seafood, $315. She was whining and dining this guy on my dime, probably ordering the lobster and laughing about how her husband was at home eating leftover pasta and watching reruns of The Office. But the absolute kicker? The purchase that made me actually laugh out loud when I found it, sitting there in our transaction history like a neon sign advertising my wife's audacity. A Rolex. She'd bought Dylan a freaking Rolex. $11,600. From Baxter's Fine Jewelry downtown. I had to sit down when I saw that one. Actually had to take a seat and process the sheer magnitude of the disrespect. I was driving a 7-year-old Honda Civic with a check engine light I'd been ignoring for 3 months because I couldn't afford the repair. But sure, Dylan breathed deep needed a Rolex. For teaching people to stretch. For being enlightened. For sleeping with someone else's wife. For a guy who taught stretching for a living, he was really, really good at reaching into my wallet. I took screenshots of everything. Every hotel charge. Every restaurant bill. Every piece of jewelry that I definitely hadn't received. Built a digital file folder titled Tax Documents 2023 because Camille never looked at anything related to taxes. She'd rather get audited by the IRS than voluntarily open a spreadsheet. I even found their hotel reservation confirmations in her email. She'd gotten sloppy, using our shared laptop one evening while I pretended to watch TV. The Riverside Inn. Valentine's Day weekend. While I'd been at a work conference in Phoenix, she'd been playing house with Yoga Boy in a suite with a hot tub. The reservation was under Mr. and Mrs. Dylan Thompson. Mrs. Dylan Thompson. She'd even practiced being his wife. I closed the laptop, took a deep breath, smiled. Everything okay? Camille asked from the kitchen, where she was making herself a green tea that probably cost more per ounce than gold. Perfect, I said. Just checking some work stuff. Don't work too hard, she called back, voice dripping with false concern. Wouldn't dream of it, I replied. Captain looked up at me from his spot on the floor, tail wagging. At least someone in this house was honest. Finding a good divorce lawyer is like finding a good therapist. You need someone who won't judge you for your terrible life choices, but will absolutely help you make better ones going forward. I found Rita Collins through a Google search at 2 in the morning while Camille was snoring beside me, probably dreaming about downward dogs and betrayal. The search terms were specific: best divorce lawyer near me, aggressive divorce attorney, and my personal favorite, lawyer who will destroy my cheating spouse legally. Rita's website came up first. 5 stars on every review platform. Testimonials that read like victory speeches. Rita got me everything. She's a shark in a pantsuit. My ex-husband cried during mediation. That last one sold me. I wanted tears. I wanted justice. I wanted someone who understood that sometimes being nice gets you nowhere except divorced and broke. I called her office the next morning from my car during lunch break, parked in the construction site lot where nobody could overhear me plotting the dismantling of my marriage. Her receptionist answered on the second ring. Collins Legal Group. How may I direct your call? I need to speak with Rita Collins about a divorce. Are you a current client? Not yet, but I will be if she's half as good as her reviews say. There was a pause, then a slight laugh. Hold please. 30 seconds later, a voice came on the line that could have cut glass. This is Rita Collins. I understand you're interested in dissolving a marriage. Dissolving sounds so polite, I said. I'm interested in legally obliterating one. Another pause. Then, come to my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring every financial document you have access to. Bank statements, credit cards, mortgage papers, tax returns, investment accounts. Everything. Don't leave anything out, even if you think it's irrelevant. Especially if you think it's irrelevant. That's a lot of paperwork. That's what winning looks like, Mr. Gray. Milo Gray. Well, Mr. Gray, if you want to walk away from this with your dignity and your assets intact, you'll bring the paperwork. Otherwise, we're just having an expensive conversation about your feelings, and I charge $350 an hour for that. I liked her immediately. The next morning, I showed up at her office with a banker's box full of documents I'd spent the previous evening organizing while Camille was at another girls' night that probably involved less girl and more Dylan. Rita's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown that screamed success. Marble floors, abstract art that cost more than my car, a waiting room with leather chairs that didn't squeak when you sat down. Rita herself was exactly what I expected and somehow more. Mid-40s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost what I made in a month. Dark hair pulled back in a bun so tight it could have been a facelift. She had the kind of eyes that missed nothing and forgave even less. When she shook my hand, her grip was firmer than most men's. "Mr. Gray, sit." I sat, placed the box on her desk. She opened it, started pulling out documents with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Walk me through your situation. Start from the beginning. Don't embellish. Don't leave anything out because you're embarrassed. I've heard worse, I promise." So I told her. Everything. The smartwatch. The hotel charges. The $11,000 Rolex for a yoga instructor named Dylan Breathe Deep, who probably thought Namaste was Sanskrit for your wife, my girlfriend. Rita didn't interrupt. Just took notes on a legal pad with handwriting so precise it looked typed. When I finished, she looked up. "You want revenge or justice?" I'd thought about this question during the sleepless hours between discovering the affair and actually doing something about it. Revenge was tempting. Public humiliation, scorched earth, making sure everyone knew what Camille had done. Justice was cleaner, getting what I deserved legally, walking away whole. Why not both? Rita smiled. Actually smiled. It was terrifying and reassuring at the same time. "I was hoping you'd say that. Let's get to work." We spent the next 3 hours going through every document I'd brought. And that's when the real story emerged. The one that made me go from heartbroken husband to genuinely angry human being. Camille had been moving money. Our money. Joint account funds that were supposed to be for household expenses, emergency savings, future plans. She'd been systematically transferring them to her personal account. Small amounts at first. 500 here. 1,000 there. Nothing that would trigger immediate alarm bells. But over the last 6 months, she'd moved nearly $40,000. "Look at this," Rita said, pointing to a series of transactions. "She's been documenting expenses she claims you made. High-end electronics, gambling debts, bar tabs. See these notes in the transaction history." I leaned forward. Sure enough, there were memos attached to several transfers. Milo's poker night, $800. Milo's new gaming system, $200. Covering Milo's bar tab again, $650. "I don't play poker," I said flatly. "I don't have a gaming system. And I haven't been to a bar in 6 months because I've been too busy being a perfect husband while she destroyed our marriage." "I know," Rita said. "She's building a case, making it look like you're financially irresponsible. That way, when the divorce happens, she can argue she needs more because you've been bleeding the accounts dry." That's... I couldn't even finish the sentence. The audacity was breathtaking. "That's fraud," Rita finished. "And it's going to be her downfall. Here's what we're going to do." What we did was methodical, surgical. Rita helped me freeze our joint accounts, legally, citing suspected fraudulent activity, which wasn't even a lie. We collected evidence of every false transaction, every fabricated expense. Rita had a forensic accountant friend named Marcus who looked like an accountant. Khakis, glasses, the personality of a tax form, but had the investigative skills of the FBI. Marcus traced where the money actually went. Not to cover my fictional gambling addiction or bar tabs. To hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores. To fund Camille's affair while simultaneously framing me as the irresponsible one. "This is good," Rita said during our third meeting, reviewing Marcus's report. "This is very good. For you, I mean. Terrible for her." How terrible? The kind of terrible that makes judges very angry. Marital assets used to fund an extramarital affair while falsifying records to frame the innocent spouse? That's a highlight reel of what not to do in a divorce. We worked in secret. I'd take long lunches, claiming I needed to clear my head. Camille didn't question it. She was probably relieved to have me out of the house, giving her more time to text Dylan about his chakras or whatever they discussed between sessions of ruining my life. Rita and I developed a strategy. We'd wait. Let Camille think she was winning. Let her keep moving money, keep building her false narrative. Every transaction was more evidence. Every lie was another nail in her coffin. The key, Rita explained, is patience. She thinks you're oblivious. Let her keep thinking that. Meanwhile, we're building an airtight case that will leave her with nothing and you with everything. Everything. The house, the car, the accounts, maybe even spousal support if we play this right, though I suspect you'd rather cut off your arm than take money from her. You suspect correctly. Pride is expensive in divorce, Mr. Gray. Call me Milo. And I'll take the pride hit if it means watching her face when she realizes she lost. Rita closed the file folder. I think we're going to get along just fine. While Camille thought I was home watching football and being the clueless husband she'd married, I was actually watching her world unravel one bank statement at a time. I became fluent in legal terminology, learned about asset division and marital misconduct, spent evenings reviewing documents Rita sent over encrypted email. Captain would sit beside me, head on my lap, providing moral support. We're gonna be okay, buddy, I'd tell him. Better than okay. He'd wag his tail like he believed me. Smart dog. If acting was measured by how well you could pretend your life wasn't imploding while smiling through gritted teeth, I deserved every award Hollywood had to offer. I became the perfect husband again. Not just good, perfect. The kind of husband that makes other wives point at their men and say, "Why can't you be more like him?" It was a performance for the ages, and Camille had front row seats without even realizing she was watching a show. I started bringing her breakfast in bed. Not just coffee and toast. I'm talking the whole production. Scrambled eggs with chives. Turkey bacon because she decided regular bacon was too inflammatory. Fresh squeezed orange juice that required me to wake up 30 minutes early just to wrestle with citrus fruit like I was training for some kind of agricultural combat. I'd arrange everything on a tray with a cloth napkin. We had cloth napkins now, apparently that was a thing, and deliver it with a smile that should have won me a Golden Globe. "You're so sweet," she'd say, barely looking up from her phone. Probably texting Dylan about their next hotel rendezvous or whatever spiritual journey they were planning. What's the occasion? No occasion. Just wanted to do something nice for my wife. My wife. The words tasted like battery acid, but I said them anyway because that's what Oscar-nominated husbands do. They commit to the role. I complimented her hair. Every single day. "Your hair looks amazing. Did you do something different? It's gorgeous. That style really suits you." It didn't matter that she'd had the same haircut for 2 years. I acted like every day was a revelation in follicular excellence. She'd blush, play with her ends, soak up the attention like a cactus in a rainstorm. Meanwhile, Rita was sending me updates via encrypted messages that looked like work emails. Regarding the Johnson project, Phase 2 complete. Translation. We've successfully moved the house deed into your sole name using a legal loophole involving a refinance you signed off on 3 years ago that Camille forgot about. The quarterly reports look favorable. Translation. Your retirement accounts are now protected and she can't touch them. I even went to her charity gala. The annual Glow for Good event that her company hosted every year to raise money for something. I could never remember what because the cause changed depending on what was trending. This year it was ocean conservation, which was ironic considering Camille's moral compass had been underwater for months. The gala was at the Grandview Hotel ballroom, the kind of place where a glass of wine costs $20 and they call it an investment in the cause. I wore my best suit, the same navy one I'd wear later to our anniversary dinner, and played the role of supportive spouse so convincingly that strangers came up to tell Camille how lucky she was. "You've got a good one," an older woman named Margaret said, patting Camille's arm. Margaret was on the board of directors, had more money than God, and wore pearls that probably cost more than my annual salary. So attentive, so present. You don't see that much anymore. "I know," Camille said, smiling at me with those perfect white teeth she'd had professionally bleached. "I'm very fortunate." Fortunate. That was the word she used. Like I was a lottery ticket she'd scratched off and won instead of a human being she'd systematically betrayed for half a year. I smiled back. Squeezed her hand. Thought about the spreadsheet Rita had shown me earlier that day detailing every fraudulent transaction. "We're both lucky," I said. Dylan was there too, because of course he was. He'd come as someone's plus one, a woman named Jennifer who worked in Camille's department and clearly had no idea her date was actively sleeping with her co-worker's husband. He wore a suit that looked rented and didn't quite fit, like he'd grabbed it off the rack an hour before the event. His man bun was extra tight, pulled back so severely I wondered if it was cutting off circulation to his brain. Not that there was much up there to circulate. I watched them try not to look at each other. It was painful. Amateur hour. They'd make eye contact across the room, then quickly look away like teenagers caught passing notes in class. At one point, Camille excused herself to go to the bathroom, and exactly 90 seconds later, Dylan did the same. They weren't even trying to be subtle. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. Not into the bathroom. I'm not a creep. But I positioned myself near the hallway where I could see them emerge. Sure enough, they came out together, Camille adjusting her dress, Dylan looking like he'd just won a prize at a carnival. They exchanged a quick word. She touched his arm, and then they went separate ways. I pulled out my phone, took a photo of the hallway bathroom entrance with timestamps, sent it to Rita with a simple message. More evidence. She replied immediately. Perfect. Keep it up. Back at the table, Camille's mother Patricia had arrived. Patricia was everything you'd imagine in a future mother-in-law designed to make your life miserable, critical, judgmental, with the kind of voice that could make compliments sound like insults. She wore designer everything and had opinions about everything else. Milo, she said, air kissing near my cheeks without actually touching me because God forbid. You look well. Still at that construction company. Project management, yes. Still there. That was Patricia's signature sound, which could mean anything from mild disapproval to active disgust. And they haven't promoted you yet? Camille mentioned you've been there for what, 6 years? 7. 7 years. She sipped her wine like it personally offended her. You know, Camille's father was VP by 32. Just something to think about. Camille's father had also inherited his position from his father, but pointing that out would have required Patricia to acknowledge that nepotism existed, and that wasn't the kind of reality she lived in. I'll keep that in mind, Patricia. Thank you. You're lucky she tolerates you. Patricia continued, because apparently we weren't done. My daughter could have married anyone. She had options. I smiled. Actually smiled. A real, genuine smile that came from somewhere deep in my soul where I'd stored every ounce of patience I had left. You're absolutely right, Patricia. She did have options. And she chose me. Isn't that something? Patricia's face did this thing where she couldn't decide if I was being sincere or sarcastic. She settled on her default expression, mild constipation, and turned back to her salad. Camille reached over and squeezed my hand. Thanks for being here, she whispered. I know these events aren't your thing. Anything for you, I whispered back. And I meant it. Anything to make sure you think I'm completely oblivious while Rita and I build the legal equivalent of a nuclear bomb with your name on it. The next week, I took Camille to her favorite Italian restaurant, Lorenzo's, a place in Little Italy where the pasta was handmade and the waiters acted like they were doing you a favor by bringing food. We sat outside on the patio under string lights that were supposed to be romantic, but mostly just attracted moths. This is nice, she said, twirling linguine around her fork. We should do this more often. Definitely. I agreed, cutting into my chicken parmesan. I feel like we've been disconnected lately. I want to work on us. The lie came out so smoothly, I almost believed it myself. Me too, she said, and I wondered if she actually believed what she was saying or if she was also acting. Maybe we were both frauds at this point, just sitting across from each other delivering lines in a play neither of us wanted to be in. By then, Rita had helped me quietly transfer everything valuable. The house was in my name, sole ownership, thanks to that refinance paperwork and a technicality involving primary mortgage holders. The car, a newer Honda CR-V Camille had insisted we buy last year, was registered to me. The bank accounts that hadn't been frozen were emptied and redistributed into accounts she didn't know existed. Every asset we'd built together was slowly, methodically, legally being moved out of her reach. How's work? I asked, because that's what husbands ask. Busy. The new campaign is kicking my ass. Late nights, all week. Late nights with Dylan, more likely. But I nodded sympathetically. That's rough. You're working so hard. Someone has to, she said. And there it was, the little dig. The implication that I wasn't pulling my weight. That she was the ambitious one, the successful one, while I was just Milo. Reliable, boring Milo who paid the bills and did the laundry and apparently didn't have enough hustle. I let it slide. Took a sip of wine. Smiled. You're right, I said. I should probably work on that. Camille looked surprised. She'd expected me to argue, to defend myself. Instead, I agreed. Disarmed her completely. Well, she said, softening slightly. I didn't mean. No, you're right. I could be better. I'll try harder. She reached across the table, put her hand on mine. Her wedding ring, the one I'd saved for 6 months to buy, caught the light. I appreciate you, Milo. I really do. Sure you do, I thought. About as much as you appreciate a doormat. But I smiled. Squeezed her hand back. I love you too. The waiter brought dessert. Tiramisu we'd share. I watched Camille take the first bite, watched her enjoy something I was paying for, probably thinking about Dylan and their next escape. My phone buzzed. A text from Rita. Everything's in place. When you're ready. I put the phone away. Looked at my wife. My cheating, lying, fraudulent wife who thought I was too dumb to notice, too weak to fight back, too comfortable to leave. She thought I was dumb. And you know what? She was half right. I was dumb enough to marry her. But I was smart enough to make her regret it. Dylan breathed deep. Even his name annoyed me. It wasn't just a name. It was a lifestyle brand, a philosophy, a cry for help wrapped in spiritual pseudo-wisdom. I'd done my research, because when your wife is cheating on you with someone, you become intimately familiar with every detail of their miserable existence. Dylan had a website. Of course he had a website. It was called Awaken Movement with Dylan and featured photos of him in various yoga poses on beaches at sunset, looking contemplative in a way that suggested he'd never had an original thought in his life, but was really proud of the motivational quotes he'd stolen from Instagram. His bio was a masterpiece of vague spiritual nonsense. Dylan guides souls toward their authentic selves through mindful movement and intentional breathing. Translation: he teaches people to stretch while saying things that sound deep but mean nothing. His credentials included a 200-hour yoga teacher certification from someplace in Bali, because of course it was Bali, and training in energy healing, which I'm pretty sure isn't a real thing, but sounds impressive to people who shop at Whole Foods and own crystals. He'd been texting Camille constantly. I knew because I'd started checking her phone whenever she left it unattended, which was more often than you'd think for someone conducting a secret affair. She'd gotten sloppy, comfortable. That's what happens when you think your husband is too stupid to notice. You stop being careful. The messages were nauseating. You are my peace, he'd write, like he was composing poetry instead of home wrecking. Your energy is transformative. I feel most aligned when I'm with you. Aligned. The man talked about their relationship like it was a chakra adjustment. And Camille ate it up. You make me feel alive, she'd respond. I've never felt this connected to anyone. Which was interesting because I distinctly remembered our wedding vows where she'd promised to feel connected to me for the rest of her life. Apparently that warranty had expired. But my favorite, and by favorite I mean the one that made me want to throw my phone into traffic, was when Dylan sent, "You deserve someone who sees your light." Buddy, I paid the electricity bill that powered her light. I'd been seeing it for 7 years. But sure, tell me more about illumination while you're sleeping with someone else's wife in hotels I'm financing. I decided to follow them. Not in a creepy stalker way, in a justified, evidence-gathering, preparing for legal warfare way. There's a difference. One gets you a restraining order, the other gets you a favorable divorce settlement. It was a Thursday evening, girls' night, according to Camille's calendar. She'd left the house wearing black jeans that could have been painted on and a top that definitely wasn't appropriate for hanging out with Becky unless Becky had suddenly developed an interest in seduction. Her perfume, the expensive one I'd bought her for Christmas, lingered in the hallway long after she'd gone. I waited 5 minutes. Fed Captain, who looked at me with those knowing eyes that suggested even the dog thought this was a terrible idea. I'll be back, buddy. Hold down the fort. He tilted his head, probably wondering why I was talking to him like he understood complex instructions. But dogs are good listeners, and at that point, he was the only honest relationship I had. I followed Camille's car, the CRV I'd been making payments on, from a safe distance. She was a terrible driver, constantly checking her phone at red lights, switching lanes without signaling, the kind of person who made everyone else's commute dangerous. She headed downtown, past the business district, into the trendy part of the city where everything was overpriced and underportioned. She parked near a rooftop bar called Elevation. How fitting. A place literally named after height for people who thought they were above everyone else. I parked 3 blocks away and walked back. The bar was on the 5th floor of a converted warehouse that now housed artisanal coffee shops and boutiques selling $70 candles. I took the elevator up, walked into a scene that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd seen too many movies about rich people having midlife crises. String lights everywhere. Edison bulbs hanging from exposed beams. A bartender with a waxed mustache making cocktails that probably had names like The Ascending Spirit or Conscious Connection. The kind of place where a beer costs $15 and they serve it in a mason jar because apparently we're all farmers now. And there they were, Camille and Dylan, sitting at a corner table with a view of the city skyline, acting like a budget version of Romeo and Juliet. Except Romeo had a man bun, and Juliet was married to someone else who was currently watching them from behind a decorative plant 20 feet away. Dylan looked exactly like his photos, the kind of handsome that came from good genetics and an obsessive gym routine. Tall, lean, with that infuriating yoga body that suggested he'd never eaten a carb in his life. He wore a linen shirt. Who wears linen? And those beaded bracelets that spiritual guys think make them interesting. His hair was pulled back in that signature man bun, secured with what looked like a wooden hair tie because plastic was probably too corporate for his aesthetic. They were holding hands across the table, actually holding hands like teenagers at a school dance. Camille was laughing at something he'd said, that genuine laugh I hadn't heard in months. The laugh I used to work for, back when I thought making my wife happy was an achievable goal instead of a losing battle. Dylan leaned forward, said something that made her blush. Then he did the move, you know the move. The one where the guy brushes a strand of hair behind the woman's ear like he's in a Nicholas Sparks adaptation. It's supposed to be romantic, but really it's just performative. Look at me being tender. Look at me being present. Look at me ruining someone else's marriage while pretending to be enlightened. I pulled out my phone, started recording, got video of them holding hands, the hairbrush, the way Camille looked at him like he'd hung the moon instead of just teaching people to touch their toes. Then they kissed, right there on the rooftop. Not a peck, a full-on, passionate, we're definitely sleeping together later, kiss that made the couple at the next table uncomfortable enough to look away. I got it all on video. Every second. The lighting was perfect. Golden hour, that magic time photographers love. Except instead of capturing a beautiful moment, I was documenting a betrayal that would soon be evidence in court. A waitress came by their table. I couldn't hear what they ordered, but knowing Dylan, probably something organic and locally sourced with a side of self-righteousness. Maybe a kale salad. Maybe a quinoa bowl. Definitely something that tasted like virtue signaling. They stayed for 2 hours. I watched from different vantage points around the bar, always keeping a decorative object or group of people between us. I'd become surprisingly good at surveillance. Who knew betrayal came with a free education in investigative techniques? At one point, Dylan pulled out his phone and showed Camille something that made her laugh so hard she snorted. That snort. I used to love that snort. It was the sound she made when something was genuinely funny, not just politely amusing. Now she was snorting at Dylan's phone like he'd shown her the funniest thing in human history. Probably a meme about chakras. When they finally left, they walked to the parking garage together. Separate cars, but they stopped between the vehicles for one more kiss. This one lasted even longer. I got photos from across the street, hidden behind a bus stop advertisement for injury lawyers. The irony wasn't lost on me, standing behind a billboard that asked "Been wronged," while documenting exactly how wrong I'd been. After they separated, I followed Dylan. Not Camille. I already knew where she'd go. She'd drive home, come in around 11, say girls' night was fun, and head straight to bed without kissing me goodnight. I could have written the script. But Dylan? Dylan was new territory. He drove a Prius. Of course he drove a Prius. Probably told people it was about environmental consciousness and not about gas mileage. His car had bumper stickers, Namaste, Coexist, and my personal favorite, Good vibes only. Real good vibes, buddy. Nothing says positive energy like destroying marriages. He lived in a complex called the Zen Gardens. I'm not making that up. It was one of those modern apartment buildings with a yoga studio in the lobby and a rooftop garden where people grew herbs they'd never use. His apartment was on the 3rd floor, number 304. I could see the lights turn on, could see his silhouette through the curtains as he moved around. I sat in my car. Looked at the photos and videos I'd taken. Looked at the building where the man who was sleeping with my wife lived. probably surrounded by meditation cushions and essential oil diffusers. My phone buzzed. Rita, how'd it go? I sent her everything. Every photo. Every video. The footage from the rooftop bar, the parking garage kiss, even a screenshot of Dylan's ridiculous bumper stickers. She called immediately. This is gold, Milo. Absolute gold. We can use this. Good, I said. Because I'm done playing nice. Not yet, you're not, Rita said. We're close, but we need a little more time. Let her think she's winning. Let her get comfortable. Then we strike. How much longer? 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Can you hold out? I looked at Dylan's apartment. Thought about Camille at home, probably texting him already. Thought about the $11,000 Rolex and the hotel rooms, and the lies stacked so high they could have reached this rooftop bar. Yeah, I said. I can hold out. That's my client. Go home. Pet your dog. Get some sleep. We're almost there. I drove home. Captain was waiting at the door, tail wagging like I'd been gone for years instead of hours. Good news, buddy, I said, scratching behind his ears. We got him. Captain barked. He always was the smartest one in the house. 1 week before our anniversary, Camille did something she hadn't done in 6 months. She touched me, voluntarily, without me initiating it or begging for scraps of affection like a lonely golden retriever. I was making coffee, my usual morning routine that involved stumbling around half awake while trying not to burn the house down, when she came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. I nearly dropped the coffee pot. Morning, she said, her voice doing that soft, affectionate thing it used to do back when we were happy. Or at least when I thought we were happy. Turns out I'm terrible at reading the room, especially when the room is my own marriage. Morning. I managed, trying to process this physical contact that felt as foreign as a hug from a stranger on the subway. She rested her head against my back. Actually rested it there like we were in some kind of romantic comedy montage. I was thinking, she said. Our anniversary is coming up. Oh, I knew. I'd been counting down the days like a prisoner marking time on a cell wall. 7 more days until whatever she had planned. 7 more days of pretending I didn't know my marriage was a theatrical production and I was the only one who hadn't read the script. It is, I said carefully. 3 years. 3 years, she repeated, like she was tasting the words. That's significant. Significant. That was one word for it. Other words included fraudulent, exhausting, and the biggest mistake of my adult life. But sure, let's go with significant. She pulled away, came around to face me. Her eyes, those same blue eyes I'd fallen for at a coffee shop 7 years ago when she'd accidentally grabbed my latte and apologized with a smile that made me forget my own name, were looking at me with something that resembled warmth. I want to do something special, she said. Celebrate properly. Just the 2 of us. Just the 2 of us. If only that were true. If only Dylan breathed deep wasn't a part of this equation, lurking in the background like a yoga-practicing homewrecker with good hair and bad boundaries. That sounds great, I said, because that's what you say when your cheating wife suggests celebrating the anniversary of your sham marriage. You smile. You agree. You play along. I made reservations, she continued. Somewhere meaningful. Somewhere that matters to us. My stomach dropped. I knew before she said it. Somehow I just knew. Maison du Loon. 8 o'clock next Friday. Maison du Loon. The French restaurant where I'd proposed. Where I'd gotten down on one knee in front of strangers and asked her to marry me, and she'd cried and said yes. And everyone applauded like we were the beginning of a beautiful love story instead of a cautionary tale about ignoring red flags. She wanted to end it where it began. There was a poetry to it, I had to admit. A sick, twisted poetry that only a narcissist would appreciate. That's perfect, I said, and I meant it. Not because I wanted to celebrate, but because if she was planning some kind of public spectacle, and based on her recent behavior, she absolutely was, then I needed to be ready. Rita and I had been preparing for weeks. We had evidence. We had legal documentation. We had everything except the right moment. Camille was about to hand me that moment on a silver platter at an overpriced French restaurant. I've invited a few people, she added, almost casually, like she was mentioning she'd picked up milk at the store. Just some close friends. Becky, obviously, and a few others. I thought it would be nice to celebrate with people we love. People we love. Right. Becky, who had the emotional intelligence of a car horn. And a few others, which undoubtedly included Dylan, because why would you destroy your husband privately when you could do it publicly with your boyfriend in attendance. Sounds great, I said again. I was really getting good at this lying thing. Maybe I'd missed my calling. Forget project management. I should have been an actor. She kissed my cheek. Actually kissed it. The affection was so unexpected I almost flinched. You're the best, Milo. I'm lucky to have you. For now, I thought. But I smiled. I'm lucky too. She floated out of the kitchen, literally floated, like someone who'd just planned the perfect crime and was feeling really good about it. I stood there with my coffee, staring at the space she'd occupied, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. Rita. Her timing was impeccable. Emergency meeting. My office. 1 hour. I texted back. She made her move. Anniversary dinner. Public setting. Multiple witnesses. Rita's response was immediate. Perfect. Come now. We need to prepare your countermove. I called in sick to work, told Gerald I had food poisoning, which wasn't entirely a lie because my stomach was definitely rejecting reality. Then I drove to Rita's office, where she was waiting with coffee that was significantly better than mine and a plan that was significantly more satisfying than anything I could have come up with alone. She's going to serve you divorce papers, Rita said, sitting across from me at her intimidatingly clean desk. Publicly, in front of friends. Probably recorded. She wants humiliation. She wants you broken. I figured. But here's what she doesn't know. Rita pulled out a small device from her desk drawer. It looked like a regular pen, black, sleek, professional. Except it wasn't a pen. Pen camera. Video and audio recording. Battery life of 4 hours. Connects to your phone via Bluetooth. Everything it records uploads directly to cloud storage that only you and I can access. I took the pen, turned it over in my hands. It was lighter than I expected. You're going to wear your suit jacket, Rita continued. The navy one. This pen goes in your breast pocket. Right here. She pointed to her own chest. Positioned so the camera faces outward. You'll record everything. Her serving the papers. Her friends celebrating. Dylan. He'll be there, won't he? Guaranteed. Good. Record him too. Record all of it. Whatever speech she gives, whatever humiliation she's planned, you document it. Every second. And then, Rita smiled. That terrifying, beautiful smile that meant someone was about to have a very bad day, and it wasn't going to be me. Then you give them a show they'll never forget. I've prepared something special. A little surprise that'll be showing on your phone, which you'll conveniently project onto the restaurant screens. They have TV screens there, don't they? In the bar area. For sports. Perfect. You're going to excuse yourself during the dinner. Bathroom break. Whatever. You're going to connect to their system. I'll send you instructions and queue up a special video compilation. All those photos and videos you took of Camille and Dylan. Set to music, even. I'm thinking something classical. Really lean into the drama. I stared at her. You made a video? I made a masterpiece. When you're ready, after you've signed whatever papers she gives you, after she thinks she's won, you press play. The whole restaurant sees it. Her friends see it. Dylan sees it. Most importantly, Camille sees it. And sees everyone else seeing it. I couldn't find the words. Evil? Brilliant? Both? Justice, Rita finished. That's justice. She wants to humiliate you publicly? Fine. But she's forgetting one crucial detail. What's that? You have evidence. She doesn't. We spent the next 2 hours going over the plan. Rita walked me through the technical aspects. How to position the pen camera, how to connect to the restaurant's Wi-Fi, how to cast from my phone to their screens. She'd even called ahead, pretending to be planning an event, and gotten the Wi-Fi password from their catering manager. Practice this at home, she instructed. Multiple times. You need to be smooth. Confident. If you fumble with the technology, you lose the impact. I won't fumble. Good. Because this is your one shot. You mess it up, she wins. You nail it. You walk away from this marriage with your dignity, your assets, and the satisfaction of knowing she lost everything. I practiced that night, and the next night, and every night leading up to Friday. I'd stand in front of my bathroom mirror with the pen in my pocket, pretending to receive divorce papers, pretending to sign them, then walking through the motions of pulling out my phone and connecting to an imaginary screen. Captain watched these rehearsals with what I can only describe as concern. It's fine, buddy, I'd tell him. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough. He'd tilt his head. Dogs are judgmental creatures when they want to be. Camille got more affectionate as the week went on. She'd touch my arm when talking. smile at me across the dinner table, ask about my day like she actually cared. It was the kind of behavior that would have thrilled me 6 months ago. Now it just felt like a predator playing with food before the kill. Thursday night. She was in the bathroom getting ready for bed when her phone lit up on the nightstand. A text from Becky. Tomorrow's going to be epic. He has no idea, lol. I took a photo of the screen. Sent it to Rita. She replied, "Oh, he has an idea. See you at showtime." Friday morning arrived. Camille woke up early, practically bouncing with energy. "Big day," she said, kissing my forehead before heading to the shower. "Big day," I agreed. I got dressed carefully. Navy suit, white shirt, the pen camera positioned perfectly in my breast pocket. I checked my phone. Rita had sent the video file labeled anniversary_surprise.mp4. I downloaded it, tested the Wi-Fi connection. Everything worked flawlessly. Before leaving, I knelt down to captain's level. "Wish me luck, buddy." He licked my face. Good enough. At 7:45 p.m., I pulled into the parking lot of Maison du Loon, the same restaurant where I'd promised forever, the same place where that forever was about to officially end. But this time I was ready. This time, I was writing the ending. Walking into Maison du Loon felt like voluntarily entering my own funeral, except I was the only one who knew I'd be walking back out alive. The hostess, a different one from the proposal night 3 years ago, thank God, because I didn't need someone recognizing me and asking about how married life was treating me, led me through the restaurant with that professional smile that said she'd seen too many relationship disasters unfold between these walls. The dining room looked exactly the same. Exposed brick walls trying too hard to be rustic. Chandeliers that probably cost more than my car. White tablecloths so crisp they could cut you. The smell of expensive food that would leave you hungry an hour later because French cuisine believed in portion sizes appropriate for toddlers, not grown men who'd skipped lunch because their stomach was doing Olympic-level gymnastics. And there she was. Center table. Maximum visibility. Camille had positioned herself like a queen holding court, and her loyal subjects had already assembled. Becky was there, wearing that bedazzled disaster of a dress that looked like a disco ball had exploded in a craft store. She was already 3 glasses deep into the wine. I could tell by the volume of her laugh, which had reached frequencies only dogs and bartenders could fully appreciate. Next to Becky sat 2 other women I vaguely recognized from Camille's work events. Jennifer, the one who'd brought Dylan to the charity gala without knowing she was enabling adultery, and someone named Sarah who I'd met exactly once at a company picnic where she'd spent 20 minutes telling me about her juice cleanse. Real fun at parties, that's Sarah. And then there was Dylan. Of course Dylan was there. He sat to Camille's left, his arm casually draped across the back of her chair like he paid rent there. The man bun was extra aggressive tonight, pulled so tight I wondered if his eyebrows were permanently surprised. He wore a button-down shirt, probably linen, definitely wrinkled in that "I'm too spiritual to care about ironing" way, and those beaded bracelets that I'd seen in every photo, like they were part of his skeletal structure. They all looked up when I approached. Camille's smile was radiant. Practiced. The kind of smile you give someone right before you stab them in the back, except she was going for the front this time. More dramatic that way. "Milo," she exclaimed, standing up to kiss my cheek. The performance had begun. "You look great." "Doesn't he look great, everyone?" A chorus of agreement from the table. Sure, I look great. Nothing says attractive quite like a man walking into his own ambush wearing his funeral suit. "Thanks," I said, taking my seat. The chair directly across from Camille. Perfect positioning for maximum humiliation. She'd thought of everything. The waitress came by, young, eager, probably working her way through college and definitely not paid enough to witness whatever was about to happen. She took drink orders. Camille ordered champagne for the table. "We're celebrating," she announced to no one and everyone. "Celebrating what?" I asked, playing my part perfectly. Clueless husband. Totally oblivious. Oscar-worthy performance. Becky giggled. Actually giggled like we were in middle school, and someone had passed a note about crushes. "You'll see," she said, her voice hitting a pitch that made the wine glasses vibrate. The champagne arrived. 6 glasses. Camille raised hers first, standing up because apparently sitting down wasn't theatrical enough. The pen camera in my breast pocket was recording every second. I could feel its slight weight against my chest, a reminder that I wasn't as defenseless as I looked. "To new beginnings," Camille announced, her voice carrying across the restaurant. Other diners looked over, curious about the celebration. Her friends raised their glasses. To new beginnings, they echoed. Then Becky, never one to miss an opportunity to be the loudest person in any room, added her own toast. To his new king. The table erupted in laughter. Planned laughter. Rehearsed laughter. They'd practiced this. Actually sat around and practiced how they'd humiliate me. I blinked. Looked around the table. Let the confusion show on my face because that's what they expected. Wait, That's when I saw it clearly. Dylan's arm wasn't just near Camille anymore. It was around her. Possessively. Proudly. Like he'd won a prize at a carnival. Except the prize was my wife and the carnival was my personal hell. Camille reached into her designer purse, the Michael Kors bag I'd bought her for her birthday, because I'm a generous idiot, and pulled out a manila envelope. Crisp. Professional. Definitely expensive legal stationery because even betrayal has production values. She slid it across the table toward me with the kind of dramatic flair that suggested she'd watched too many legal dramas. The envelope landed in front of my champagne glass. "Happy anniversary, Milo," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. I picked it up. My hands were steady. Rita had made me practice this part too. Don't shake. Don't show weakness. Just open it calmly like you're checking the mail. Inside were divorce papers. Neat, organized, already filled out with her lawyer's information prominently displayed. She'd even used those little sticky tabs to mark where I needed to sign. Efficient. Professional. The same organizational skills she used to plan dinner parties, now applied to dismantling our marriage. The table was watching. All of them. Waiting for my reaction. Waiting for tears, anger, a dramatic outburst they could record on their phones and post about later. You won't believe what happened at dinner tonight. But I didn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, I looked at the papers. Actually read them, taking my time. The restaurant had gone quieter. Other diners sensing drama. That universal human instinct to watch car crashes and relationship implosions. "Well," I said finally, pulling out a pen from my jacket. Not the camera pen, an actual pen I'd brought specifically for this moment. "I guess we're doing this." Camille looked surprised. She'd expected resistance. Begging maybe. Definitely not calm acceptance. "You're going to sign? Just like that? What else would I do?" I asked, finding the first signature line. "You clearly want this. You've obviously put a lot of thought into it. Who am I to stand in the way of your happiness?" I signed the first page, then the second, then the third, methodically, calmly, while the table watched in increasingly confused silence. This wasn't the script they'd written. The husband was supposed to fight back, make a scene, give them something to talk about. Dylan looked uncomfortable. Good. I hoped he was squirming in his linen shirt, realizing that maybe this was happening too easily, that something fell off. When I finished signing, I slid the papers back across the table, looked Camille directly in the eyes, those blue eyes that had once made me forget my own name, now just reminding me of every lie she'd told. "Thank you," I said quietly. "Sincerely. Thank you for the show. This has been incredibly enlightening." The table stirred. Whispers. Confused glances. Camille's smile flickered. "That's it," Becky said, disappointed. "You're just okay with this?" Why wouldn't I be? I stood up, straightening my tie, the pen camera capturing everything from my breast pocket. She wants to be with Dylan. Dylan wants to be with her. Everyone's getting what they want. It's practically a fairy tale. I picked up my champagne glass, took a sip, let them sit in the uncomfortable silence. "Actually," I said, setting the glass down, "since we're celebrating new beginnings and everyone's being so honest tonight, I have something too. A little anniversary surprise of my own." Camille's face changed. Just slightly. A flicker of uncertainty. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone. "Well, you shared your news. Only seems fair I share mine." The restaurant had a large TV screen in the bar area, visible from most tables. They usually showed sports, football, basketball, whatever game was on. But tonight they were about to show something much more interesting. I'd practiced this part 50 times. Connecting to their Wi-Fi took 3 seconds. Finding the casting option took 2 more. Pulling up the video file Rita had prepared, the masterpiece compilation of every photo and video I'd taken of Camille and Dylan over the past weeks, took another 3. "What are you doing?" Camille asked, her voice rising slightly, the confidence cracking. "Sharing," I said simply. "Isn't that what we're doing tonight? Sharing our truth." I pressed play. The screen flickered. The restaurant's sports highlight reel disappeared. In its place, a video began, set to classical music. Rita had chosen Vivaldi's Winter, which was perfect because it was cold, dramatic, and about to freeze everyone in this restaurant. The first image appeared. Camille and Dylan at the rooftop bar, holding hands, kissing. The timestamp clearly visible. 3 weeks ago. Camille's face went white. Actually white, like someone had drained the blood directly from her body. The video continued. More photos. The parking garage kiss. Hotel check-in selfies I'd found on her cloud storage that she thought was private. Text message screenshots with Dylan calling her my goddess, and her responding with heart emojis and promises. The restaurant went completely, utterly, dead silent. Becky dropped her fork. The clatter echoed. Dylan looked like he wanted to crawl under the table and die there. Jennifer, poor, innocent Jennifer, gasped audibly. Sarah stopped mid-sip of her wine, mouth hanging open. Other diners had turned to watch. Some pulled out their phones. I could see them recording. This was going to be on social media within the hour. Camille's worst nightmare. Public humiliation. Except she wasn't the one doing the humiliating anymore. The video played for 2 full minutes. Every incriminating photo. Every romantic text. Every lie she told me while I was home doing laundry and paying bills. When it ended, the screen went black. Then a single line of text appeared, white letters on black background. Happy anniversary, Camille. Wish granted. I pocketed my phone. Looked at my wife, ex-wife now, I guess, since I'd signed the papers, and smiled. A genuine, peaceful smile that came from somewhere deep inside where I'd stored 3 years of frustration and 6 months of betrayal. You wanted an unforgettable night, I said. Consider this my gift. The silence was delicious. Absolutely delicious. The silence in Maison du Loon lasted approximately 5 seconds before absolute chaos erupted. Camille stood up so fast her chair tipped backward and crashed to the floor with a sound that made every person in the restaurant jump. Her face had gone from white to red so quickly I wondered if she was having some kind of medical emergency. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. She was just experiencing the consequences of her actions in real time, which for people like Camille felt a lot like dying. You, she started, but the words wouldn't come. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, desperately trying to form sentences, but only managing to look like she was practicing silent screaming. Dylan had actually slid down in his chair, trying to make himself smaller. Difficult to do when you're 6 feet tall with a man bun that added another 3 inches, but he was giving it his best shot. His face had achieved a shade of red I didn't know human skin could produce. Somewhere between sunburn and cardiac arrest. Becky was staring at her phone, where she'd apparently pulled up the video someone had already posted to TikTok. Oh my God, she kept saying. Oh my God. Oh my God. Real vocabulary powerhouse. That Becky. A true wordsmith. Jennifer had her hand over her mouth, looking between Dylan and Camille like she was watching a tennis match in hell. Sarah had actually started crying. The whether from secondhand embarrassment or because her juice cleanse had left her emotionally unstable, I couldn't tell. The other diners were recording everything. Multiple phones pointed at our table like we were a live episode of reality TV. Which, I guess we were. Real housewives of broken marriages, or whatever they'd call this disaster. You recorded us? Camille finally managed to say, her voice shaking with what I assumed was rage but could have been humiliation or possibly both mixing together into some kind of emotional cocktail. I documented evidence. I corrected. There's a difference. One sounds creepy. The other sounds smart. You had no right. Actually, I interrupted, pulling out my phone again. I had every right. Those were taken in public places. That's you and Dylan at a rooftop bar. You at the Riverside Inn. You spending $11,000 of our joint money on a Rolex for your yoga instructor boyfriend. Should I keep going? Because I have spreadsheets. Rita made me spreadsheets. At the mention of Rita's name, Camille's face did something new. Recognition. Fear. The dawning realization that I hadn't just stumbled into this moment. I'd planned it. You have a lawyer, she said flatly. I have a great lawyer. You should get her number. Except you can't, because she's mine and you're going to need someone who specializes in losing cases. Dylan finally found his voice. It came out as a squeak. This is really uncool, man. I turned to look at him. Really look at him. The man who'd been sleeping with my wife, spending my money, living in my marriage like a parasite with good hair and flexible hamstrings. Uncool. I repeated. You're calling me uncool? You're wearing a shirt made of linen to a formal restaurant. You have a bracelet made of beads like you're at a summer camp friendship ceremony. Your last name is Breathe Deep, which I'm 90% sure isn't even real. And you're lecturing me about cool. He opened his mouth, closed it. Apparently had nothing. That's what I thought, I said. The manager appeared then, a small French man named Henri who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Monsieur, I must ask you to. I'm leaving, I said, standing up. Don't worry. The show's over. And dinner's on her. I pointed to Camille. She's got plenty of money. She's been stealing mine for 6 months. I walked out of that restaurant with my head high and my dignity intact. Behind me, I could hear Camille starting to cry. Real, ugly crying that made me feel absolutely nothing. I'd used up all my sympathy over the last 6 months while she was busy destroying us. The valet brought my car around. I tipped him $20 because he'd had to witness that disaster and deserved compensation for emotional trauma. My phone started blowing up before I even left the parking lot. Rita called first. I answered on Bluetooth. Please tell me it went exactly as planned, she said. Better, I replied. The restaurant manager's nephew posted it on TikTok. Silence. Then, you're joking. I wish I was. Check your phone. Search, divorce restaurant karma. We're trending. I heard typing on her end. Then laughter. Actual, genuine laughter that sounded like she was having trouble breathing. Oh my God, Milo. Oh my God. The title is When Hubby Serves Karma Instead of Dessert. It has 200,000 views already. How many? 200,000. In 30 minutes. This is viral. Like, actually viral. You broke the internet. By the time I got home, the video had hit 500,000 views. Captain met me at the door, tail wagging, completely oblivious to the fact that his owner had just become a social media phenomenon. I scratched behind his ears and checked my phone again. The comments were gold. Pure gold. This is how you handle a cheater. Respect. The classical music sent me. Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear navy suits and bring receipts. Dylan Breathe Deep? That's his name. She downgraded so hard. The way he just signed the papers and then dropped the bomb. Strategic King. Someone had made it into a meme already. A screenshot of my face from the video with the caption, POV, you've been planning your revenge for 6 months, and it's finally time. By midnight, every major gossip account had picked it up. By morning, it had 3 million views across multiple platforms. The local news even did a segment about it, though they blurred faces and changed names, talking about public displays of divorce drama and whether recording people without permission was legal. Spoiler, in public places, it absolutely is. Camille's Instagram, which she'd carefully curated with photos of her authentic life, and her journey to self-discovery, was getting destroyed. Every post had comments. Is this before or after you cheated on your husband? Authentic life equals authentically terrible person? Dylan called. He wants his dignity back. Oh wait, you took that too. She made everything private within 24 hours. Too late. Screenshots live forever. The internet has a longer memory than elephants and fewer forgiveness protocols. Dylan's social media disappeared entirely. His Instagram, Facebook, even his professional yoga website, all gone. Vanished into the digital void like he'd never existed. Awaken Movement with Dylan became Awaken Movement into Witness Protection Program. His yoga studio, the one where he taught enlightenment and intentional breathing to middle-aged women with too much money, posted a statement. Dylan Thompson is no longer affiliated with our practice. We wish him well on his journey. Corporate speak for, we fired him so fast he got whiplash. Becky, loyal Becky who'd been Camille's best friend since college, ghosted her faster than you could say guilty by association. Turns out when your best friend becomes internet famous for being a terrible person, friendship has limits. Who knew? Jennifer and Sarah? Also gone. Unfollowed on social media. Blocked her number. Probably burned any photos they had together in some kind of cleansing ritual. Camille tried texting me. Multiple times. We need to talk. This is insane. You're insane. You ruined my life. Please, can we just talk? I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Rita had advised against any communication that wasn't through lawyers, and for once in my life, I was taking good advice. Patricia, Camille's mother, did call though. Left a voicemail that was 10 minutes of her explaining how this was somehow my fault for not supporting Camille's growth and stifling her authentic self. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Life's too short for Patricia's opinions. The legal fallout was even more satisfying than the social media explosion. Rita worked fast, faster than I thought possible. Within a week, everything was finalized. The house. Mine. Sole ownership. Camille had signed away her rights when she'd moved all that money fraudulently. Turns out judges really don't like it when you steal from joint accounts while framing your spouse. The car? Mine. The CRV she'd been driving around. The one I'd been making payments on while she used it to visit Dylan? I had it towed from her mother's house where she'd been staying. She called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer once. The bank accounts? Frozen initially, then divided according to what was actually fair, which meant I got back everything she'd stolen plus interest. Rita was a magician with financial law. The savings account we'd been building for a house upgrade? All mine. The retirement fund? Split properly, but I didn't lose a cent to her fraud. Dylan tried to sue me. Actually had the audacity to get a lawyer and claim defamation. His lawyer sent a cease and desist letter about the video. Rita laughed so hard when she read it that she had to put it down and compose herself. Then she sent back a response that was basically, my client documented factual events in public spaces. Your client is a public figure who teaches yoga professionally. This falls under newsworthy content. Also, truth is an absolute defense to defamation. Try again. We never heard from Dylan's lawyer after that. But my favorite part? The absolute best part of this entire disaster? Captain. The dog. Our golden retriever who'd been Switzerland during the marriage, loving both of us equally. Camille tried to claim him in the divorce. Argued that she'd been the one to pick him out at the shelter, that she'd named him Captain, that he was hers. Rita scheduled a home visit. The judge wanted to see where the dog would be living with each person. Camille was staying at her mother's apartment. Small. No yard. Patricia was allergic to dogs but dealing with it because her daughter needed support. I had the house. Fenced backyard. Dog door. Captain's entire life was in that house. But the real kicker? When Camille came to pick Captain up for the home visit, he growled at her. Actually growled. This dog who'd never shown aggression to anyone in his entire life, who'd been friendly to mailmen and squirrels, and that one time a raccoon broke into the garage. This dog looked at Camille and growled. Then he came and sat next to me, leaned against my leg, made his choice. The judge awarded me full custody. Good boy, Captain. Very good boy. 6 months after the dinner that broke the internet and my marriage simultaneously, I moved into a new apartment on the west side of the city. 14th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown. 2 bedrooms. One for me, one for an office where I could actually work without someone sighing dramatically in the background about my lack of ambition. The place came with a balcony big enough for Captain to sunbathe and judge the people walking below, which had become his favorite hobby besides eating and reminding me that I was worth more than a cheating wife and her yoga instructor boyfriend. My mornings now consisted of black coffee, the good stuff, not the cheap grocery store brand I'd been buying to save money for Camille's shopping habits, and silence. Blessed, beautiful silence. No one asking me to communicate more emotionally. No one criticizing my career choices while spending $11,000 on a Rolex for someone else. No one pretending to go to girls' night while actually going to Dylan's apartment to practice poses that definitely weren't in any yoga manual. Just me, Captain, and the view of a city that suddenly felt full of possibilities instead of obligations. The apartment came furnished with minimal effort on my part. Turns out when you're not financing someone else's affair, you have disposable income for things like couches that don't sag in the middle and kitchen appliances that actually work. I bought a TV that was bigger than necessary. Got a coffee maker that probably had more features than my car. Adopted a plant named Gerald after my old boss, because it required minimal attention and occasionally looked dead, but kept surviving anyway. Work got better too. I'd gotten a promotion 2 months after the divorce finalized, project manager to senior project manager, which came with a raise that would have made Patricia choke on her wine if she knew. Turned out when you're not emotionally exhausted from a failing marriage, you actually have energy for career advancement. Who knew? Camille tried texting once. Just once. About 3 months into my new life. Can we talk? I looked at that message for a solid minute. Thought about all the conversations we'd had over 7 years together. The good ones in the beginning, when we'd stayed up late talking about dreams and plans. The mediocre ones in the middle, when we'd talked about groceries and bills. The non-existent ones at the end, when she'd been too busy texting Dylan to notice I was in the same room. I replied with a link. Not to the viral video. That felt too obvious. Instead, I sent her a YouTube link to a yoga tutorial. Downward dog for beginners. Because I'm petty, but I'm creative about it. She blocked my number immediately after that. Perfect. Rita called every few weeks to check in, though our conversations had shifted from legal strategy to genuine friendship. Turned out when you go through a war together, you bond. She'd invite me to her book club sometimes, a group of lawyers who drank wine and argued about plot holes in legal thrillers. I fit right in. You should write a book, Rita said one evening after her book club had spent an hour debating whether John Grisham understood actual courtroom procedure. About the whole experience. Call it something catchy. Like what? How to stretch your patience until it snaps, she suggested, grinning. Or a namaste away from my wife. I actually considered it. Maybe I would write it someday. Maybe not. For now, I was content just living it. This new chapter where I wasn't the punchline anymore. Captain walked over and dropped a tennis ball at my feet, tail wagging with the eternal optimism only dogs possess. You're right, buddy, I said, scratching behind his ears. It's a good life. He barked in agreement. Because here's the thing about revenge. Everyone says it doesn't solve anything, that it's empty and unsatisfying, that taking the high road is better. And maybe they're right. Maybe I should have just signed the papers quietly and walked away without the theatrics. But you know what? That video hit 10 million views. Camille's influencer career died harder than our marriage. Dylan's yoga studio went out of business. And I got the house, the dog, and the last laugh. So when they toasted to his new king, that night at Maison du Loon, they had no idea the real king was already sitting at the table, smiling, planning, and about to remind everyone that underestimating the quiet guy is always a mistake. Turns out I wasn't the idiot husband after all. I was just patient. And patience, as it turns out, is the best revenge you can buy. So what? You file paperwork for the army. My wife's sister grinned at the barbecue. I wiped my hands on Alpha Nu Alpha Kappa. No, I fly. She laughed. Oh yeah? What's your call sign? I said, Iron Widow. My wife's dad, a Navy SEAL, went still. Girl, apologize. Now, he knew exactly who I was. If hell hosted a family reunion, it would look exactly like the Hayes summer barbecue. Plastic chairs that stuck to your thighs, cheap beers sweating in coolers, country music that made you question humanity, and unsolicited career advice from people who think LinkedIn is a dating app. I was standing at the grill, watching a questionable piece of chicken pretend to be edible, when I realized once again why the phrase in-laws sounds like a legal sentence. I'd been married to Harper Hayes for 5 years. She was perfect, smart, kind, and the only Hayes with a functioning sense of humor. But her family? Oh, her family was a sitcom that ran for too many seasons. There was Patricia, the mom who still introduced herself as retired model turned homemaker, even though her modeling career ended when bell bottoms did. Douglas Hayes, Commander Douglas Hayes, the retired Navy SEAL turned barbecue dictator who thought tongs were tactical gear. And then there was Chloe, Harper's sister, the kind of woman who majored in sarcasm and minored in making other people uncomfortable. If confidence were currency, Chloe would have owned a small country, possibly one with bad Wi-Fi and a law against humility. So there I was, flipping burgers like it was a military op, trying to stay under the radar, when she leaned in with that grin, the kind that said, I'm about to ruin your day for sport. So, Ryan, she started, swirling her drink like a Bond villain in flip-flops. You file paperwork for the army, right? The sound of sizzling meat and country twang nearly drowned her out. But trust me, my brain heard every syllable. No, I said, wiping my hands on a napkin. I fly. She snorted. Actually snorted. Oh yeah? What's your call sign, Iron Chef? Her voice was loud enough to get everyone's attention. Even the dog stopped sniffing the cooler. I smiled, that calm, dangerous smile pilots use right before things get interesting. Close, I said. Iron Widow. Her laugh died mid-breath. You could almost hear the record scratch. Commander Hayes froze mid-bite, ribs halfway to his mouth, and for once, the man looked confused. That never happens. Girl, he said in a tone that could freeze lava, apologize. Now. Chloe blinked. Wait, what? Harper looked up from the salad table, frowning. Patricia's face went pale, which was impressive considering her usual shade of cosmetic beige. Dad, Harper asked, glancing between us. The spatula slipped slightly in my hand. I was calm, but my brain was already going full alert. The commander knew. The old man knew. You could see it in his face, that flash of memory, that flicker of recognition. He wasn't looking at me like his daughter's husband anymore. He was looking at Iron Widow, the guy he once thought was a myth. The backyard went dead quiet. Even the mosquitoes called a ceasefire. Everyone's eyes shifted to Douglas Hayes, who now looked like he was seeing a ghost. He set his plate down, jaw tightening. Apologize, he repeated, voice rougher this time. You don't talk to that man like that. Dad, what's going on? Harper asked, clearly trying to process why her father had suddenly turned into Liam Neeson. It's nothing, I said, flipping another burger. Your dad's just remembering something classified. Douglas gave me a look. That mix of gratitude and guilt you only see from someone who's suddenly realizing the quiet guy at the barbecue once saved his life. Patricia stepped forward, clutching her wine glass like a talisman. What's Iron Widow? She asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. Douglas's eyes never left mine. That's the pilot who saved our men in '07. Silence. Harper blinked. You mean? Yeah, Douglas said quietly. That was him. Chloe's mouth fell open. You're kidding. I grinned. Nope. Still not funny, though. I flipped another burger with exaggerated calm. Anyone want extra smoke on theirs? Nobody spoke. The only sound was the faint hiss of the grill and a far-off country song about trucks and heartbreak that suddenly felt way too ironic. Patricia looked between her husband and me like she was trying to rewrite the last 5 years of family history. You mean to tell me, Ryan, the one who brings potato salad in store containers, is that Iron Widow? Douglas gave a slow nod. That's him. The pilot they said didn't make it out alive. You never told us that, Harper whispered, eyes wide. You never asked, I said lightly, grabbing a beer. And to be fair, your family was more interested in mocking my choice of apron than my service record. Chloe looked like she wanted to crawl into the grill and self-immolate. I'm so sorry, she mumbled. I didn't know. Don't sweat it, I said, popping the cap off my beer. I prefer low expectations. Makes everything else look heroic. Douglas took a slow sip of his drink, eyes fixed on me like he was remembering every detail. The radio chatter, the sound of the helicopter blades, the desert storm. Iron Widow, he muttered. Damn, you really were that guy. Still am, I said. Just upgraded from sandstorms to suburban drama. The commander actually laughed. For the first time in history, the man laughed. Patricia, however, looked like she'd just realized her entire social circle had been bragging about the wrong son-in-law. You mean my bridge friends have been calling you Ryan the clerk this whole time? You can update them, I said. Maybe Ryan the guy who saved your husband's life will look better on Christmas cards. Harper was still staring at me, processing. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because, I said, flipping the last burger, I didn't marry you for applause. Chloe let out a weak laugh, more from embarrassment than humor. Okay, but Iron Widow? That's kind of badass. It's better than Iron Chef, I said. Though my burgers are pretty deadly. The tension broke. Laughter rippled through the group. Awkward at first, then real. Even Patricia chuckled, though it sounded like her pride was still digesting it. The conversation slowly shifted back to normal topics. Who brought the potato salad? Why the neighbor's kid kept stealing sodas? And whether Douglas's grill was overkill for a backyard cookout. But under all that, something had shifted. The balance. The unspoken hierarchy. The civilian son-in-law who dabbles in planes had just been promoted, permanently. Later that evening, when the sun dipped low and the fireflies came out, Douglas approached me quietly. He didn't say much, he didn't have to. He just nodded once, that subtle military nod that means respect, gratitude. We're good. Didn't expect you to recognize the call sign, I said. He smirked. Didn't expect Iron Widow to marry my daughter. Yeah, life's funny like that, I said. 1 minute you're flying through hell, the next you're arguing about potato salad. He chuckled, a deep, genuine sound I didn't think he was capable of. You handled it well, he said. Didn't rub it in. Didn't need to, I replied. They'll Google it later. He laughed again. Fair enough. Patricia joined him, looping her arm through his. Ryan, she said, voice soft now. We've misjudged you. It's okay, I said. If it helps, I misjudged your deviled eggs. She gasped, then smiled. Touché. Chloe approached next, holding a plate of brownies like a peace offering. For real? I'm sorry, she said. Guess I'm not as funny as I thought. You're fine, I said. Just remember, next time you tease someone about their job, make sure they're not licensed to bomb small countries. She laughed nervously. Deal. As the night wrapped up, I sat on the porch with Harper, watching Douglas argue with the grill like it had insulted his service record. You're awfully calm for someone who just blew up a family myth, she said. What can I say? I grinned. Classified info makes for great dinner conversation. She nudged me. I can't believe you never told me. You married me for me, not for medals, I said. Besides, your dad and I made a deal years ago. A deal? Yeah, I said, sipping my beer. He keeps my missions quiet. I pretend his grilling doesn't violate the Geneva Convention. She burst out laughing so hard she nearly dropped her drink. And in that moment, with laughter echoing across the yard, I realized something. Sometimes silence isn't about hiding who you are. It's about waiting for the right moment to remind people exactly who they're dealing with. That night, as the stars blinked over a backyard full of smoke and beer cans, I smiled to myself. The Hayes family would never look at me the same way again. And honestly, about damn time. You ever walk into a family gathering and realize you're the designated punchline? That was me, every single Hayes event before the great barbecue revelation. Imagine a roast you never agreed to, starring your in-laws as the headlining comedians and you as the confused guy holding a plate of cold coleslaw. The Hayes clan had a special gift. They could turn anything I said into a punchline and somehow make me thank them for it. Patricia, my mother-in-law, was the ringleader. She had this talent for smiling while she insulted you, like a Southern belle who just told you your shirt was adorably brave. Every time she introduced me to someone new, she'd clap her hands together and chirp. This is Ryan, our civilian son-in-law who dabbles in planes. Dabbles. Like I was finger painting with jet fuel. The woman made it sound like I occasionally glued wings to paper and hoped for lift. And Douglas, the retired SEAL patriarch, he just grunted, not words, just noises. The man could express an entire emotional range with a single He'd sit there with his arms crossed, looking like a cross between a judge and a linebacker, occasionally tossing in helpful commentary like, real pilots don't wear oven mitts when they grill, son. Then there was Chloe, my favorite. Harper's sister, a woman who made sarcasm her religion and gossip her cardio. She'd roll her eyes, toss her blonde hair, and hit me with something like, oh look, Ryan brought his little flight cap. So cute. You gonna fly the grill next? Every single time, the family would burst out laughing like it was primetime comedy hour, and I'd just smile, sip my drink, and silently remind myself that jail time wasn't worth it. They thought I was soft. They thought because I didn't brag about medals or bark orders, I must have been some paper-pushing clerk who flinched at turbulence. What they didn't know was that half the things I'd done were still stamped classified, and the other half were too insane to explain to people who still thought Bluetooth was witchcraft. But I let it slide, because in marriage, I'd learned something important. Silence beats handcuffs. You can't get arrested for thinking sarcastic thoughts, no matter how vivid they are. Every holiday, every dinner, every small family get-together, I'd put on the calm husband act. The yes, ma'am. No, sir. Please pass the casserole persona. Meanwhile, I'd sit there mentally calculating wind speed and trajectory, wondering if it was physically possible to eject from a dining table conversation without breaking a window. One Thanksgiving, Patricia decided to hold a gratitude circle. You know, that thing where everyone shares what they're thankful for while pretending not to judge each other's answers. Harper said she was thankful for family. Douglas said he was thankful for discipline. Chloe said she was thankful for Botox. Then Patricia turned to me, eyes gleaming with the kind of mischief only Chardonnay could fuel, and said, "And you, Ryan? What are you thankful for? Office supplies?" I smiled. Actually, Patricia, I'm thankful for flight clearance and fuel efficiency. She blinked, confused. Oh, she said, chuckling. You mean, like, your little job? No, I said, still smiling. Like the kind that saved 12 people's lives in Kandahar. The silence was beautiful, brief, but beautiful. Then Douglas coughed, muttered something about kids these days exaggerating, and the moment was gone. Harper squeezed my hand under the table, giving me the look, the universal married look that says please don't start a family war before dessert. So I didn't. I let it go. Again, every time they poked at me, I'd think back to the things I'd seen. Tracer rounds cutting through darkness. The way the radio goes quiet when a friend doesn't make it back. The kind of silence that makes you appreciate every dumb joke you'll ever hear again. So yeah, I could handle a few snide comments about my desk job. They were amateurs. I'd survived worse than family dinners with cheap wine and overcooked turkey. But the funny thing about people like the Hayeses? They love to underestimate you. They build this version of you in their heads. Simple, predictable, safe. And then they act shocked when you don't fit the script. Douglas would watch me mow the lawn and mutter, "Bet he logs that in his flight hours." Chloe once asked if I wore my pilot gloves while washing dishes. Patricia once gave me a gift, a framed quote that said behind every great man is a woman rolling her eyes. Cute. I hung it up in the garage, right next to my flight helmet. They didn't get it. They didn't understand that humility wasn't weakness, it was strategy. See, I'd spent years flying missions where bragging got people killed, where silence wasn't about pride, it was about survival. So yeah, I could survive family brunch. I treated their insults like turbulence, unpleasant but temporary. Harper used to whisper, "You're so patient." I'd grin and say, "Nah, just trained for long flights." And she'd laugh, because she didn't know how literal that was. The truth was, I didn't need them to respect me. I just needed them to keep their noise below jet engine level until dessert. The worst was the Christmas party. Douglas had decided to host a military-themed dinner, because apparently, nothing says holiday spirit like camo tablecloths and flag napkins. He wore his old uniform jacket, chest puffed like a peacock, while I sat there in a sweater Harper picked out, trying not to laugh at the irony. At one point, he leaned back and said, "You know, Ryan, you remind me of my old radio guy. Good with buttons, bad under pressure." I took a sip of my drink, smiled, and said, "Funny, you remind me of my old co-pilot. Loud and always slightly lost." Harper choked on her wine. Chloe spat out a laugh. Douglas froze, and for one brief moment, I thought I might have just earned his respect, or a headlock. But he grinned, nodded slowly, and said, "You've got bite, son. I like that." I smiled back. "Careful, Commander. I bite harder than I look." Patricia gasped. Chloe laughed so hard she had to excuse herself. And for a second, just 1 second, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd crack through the fortress of Hayes' arrogance. Then Patricia refilled her glass and said, "Oh, men and their jokes. Anyway, Ryan, how's your little flying hobby?" And boom, back to square one. The following months were rinse and repeat. More dinners, more mockery, more chances for me to fantasize about moving to another state. But through it all, Harper stayed loyal, always defending me, always reminding them that I was more than they gave me credit for. She'd say things like, "Ryan's flown more miles than you've driven, Dad," or "He's just modest, Mom." And every time, they'd nod like she'd said something adorable, then go right back to treating me like the family's emotional support husband. Still, I kept showing up. Because love makes you do stupid things, like attending brunches with people who think Top Gun is a documentary. But here's the thing. When you're surrounded by ignorance long enough, you learn to weaponize it. You turn it into armor. Their underestimation became my favorite invisibility cloak. I could observe, plan, and quietly enjoy knowing I had stories they'd never believe. Stories they wouldn't even be cleared to hear. And I knew, deep down, that someday, the truth would surface. That one day, the universe would hand me a microphone, or in my case, a spatula, and say, "Your turn." Until then, I kept flipping metaphorical burgers, smiling through the jokes, and thinking to myself, ignorance is loud, but it burns out fast. And when that summer barbecue rolled around, the one where Chloe cracked her Iron Chef joke, oh, I was ready. I didn't plan the reveal, but when it happened, when the laughter died and Douglas Hayes himself went pale, it felt like poetic justice. Every snide comment, every jab, every little pilot nickname, all of it turned to ash the second he realized who I really was. The same man they dismissed had once flown through hell to save Douglas's squad. The same civilian son-in-law had kept their family's patriarch alive long enough to have these barbecues in the first place. Karma, as it turns out, loves irony. Looking back, those years of ignorance were the setup. Every joke, every condescending smile, it made that one moment of silence hit harder. Because respect isn't earned by bragging. It's earned by surviving, by standing there calm and steady while people reveal who they are. So yeah, before that day, every Haze gathering felt like a roast I never signed up for. But after that day, let's just say they started Googling Iron Widow real fast. And somewhere between Patricia's shocked silence and Douglas's sudden salute, I realized, sometimes the best revenge is just letting the truth land on its own runway. You ever notice how a backyard barbecue smells like peace until you realize you're surrounded by people who think mayonnaise is a spice and gossip is a sport? That was me, apron on, spatula in hand, pretending the smell of lighter fluid and hypocrisy didn't clash. From the outside, it looked like a normal Saturday. Paper plates, plastic cups, kids chasing each other with water balloons, someone's uncle complaining about gas prices like he personally controlled OPEC. But inside my head, the sound of laughter and clinking bottles kept dissolving into rotor blades and radio static. It's weird how trauma sneaks up on you. 1 second you're flipping burgers, the next your brain's replaying a desert storm like a movie you didn't buy tickets for. I remember looking at the smoke curling up from the grill, and all I could think was, I've seen that color before, over Kandahar, over broken metal, over a horizon that never forgave me. Most people think flying is glamorous. They imagine Top Gun high-fives, sunset shots, and aviator shades that make you irresistible. Reality check. Most of the time, you're sweating in a cockpit that smells like fuel and fear, praying the radar isn't lying. My call sign, Iron Widow, wasn't some macho nickname I picked because it sounded cool. It was given to me after my third emergency landing, the one where the co-pilot didn't make it back. There's a twisted rule in our squadron. You earn a call sign by surviving something no one else should have. Iron Widow stuck because every time the odds went bad, I walked away, and someone didn't. Not exactly a party story. So yeah, I kept that one to myself. So while the Haze family was debating whether sweet corn or coleslaw counted as a vegetable, I was standing over the grill, surrounded by people who thought classified meant boring. I could hear Chloe laughing behind me, already working the crowd like she was running open mic night. Ryan takes his grilling seriously, she said. He probably writes a flight plan for his burgers. Everyone laughed. Huh. Original. I just smiled, flipped a patty, and muttered under my breath, at least my burgers don't crash. Douglas, the commander himself, was on his second beer, holding court about the good old days, SEAL missions, covert ops, near-death experiences that conveniently never had witnesses. Every sentence started with, back when men were men, which roughly translated to, please clap. I didn't mind. I'd learned early that old soldiers need to tell stories so they can live with the ones they can't. But then he said it, the thing that always poked my patience. Flying, he told a wide-eyed cousin, is logistics. The real work's on the ground. I nearly choked on my own smirk. Logistics? Buddy, I once flew through a sandstorm so thick it looked like Mars was trying to kill us. I've dodged RPGs, navigated blind, and landed on a runway that barely existed, all while listening to screaming through a headset. Logistics my ass. But I didn't say that. I just brushed some barbecue sauce on a drumstick like I was painting calmness onto chaos. The truth, and oh, it was a juicy one, was that Douglas's legendary SEAL team wouldn't have made it home in 2007 if it weren't for Iron Widow. Yep, that was me. Same guy now in an apron with Kiss the Cook, printed in red letters like a cosmic joke. His team was pinned down in an op that went sideways fast. Wrong coordinates, sandstorm inbound, radio blackout. Command told me to abort. I didn't. Because when you hear men screaming coordinates through static, you don't check your manual. You check your pulse and push forward. I still remember the sound of the engine straining, the storm turning daylight into blood orange, visibility down to nothing, and that gut feeling that said, if you mess this up, they're done. I dropped elevation, went under the radar, literally, and pulled those guys out piece by piece. 12 of them, Douglas included. He was younger then, meaner, but alive because of a very reckless pilot who didn't listen to orders. He never talked about it. Probably because it's hard to make jokes about the guy who once had your life in his hands. I don't blame him. Pride's a funny thing. It burns slow, like jet fuel. Some men spend years pretending their near death didn't happen because it reminds them they weren't in control. And Douglas? Control was his religion. So he kept it quiet, let the myth fade. And meanwhile, I built a new life. Quieter, calmer, more human. I swapped cockpits for cul-de-sacs, combat for cookouts, and I told myself that silence was strength. Until that damn barbecue. The smell of charcoal kept messing with me. Smoke does that to veterans. You don't just see it, you feel it. It crawls up your spine, whispers memories you thought you'd buried. I stared at the flame, saw the same shimmer of heat that used to rise off the tarmac after a landing. My hand tightened on the spatula. Ridiculous, right? But it wasn't a spatula anymore. It was a flight stick, slick with sweat. I blinked hard, shook it off, and turned the meat. Nobody noticed, which was good. The last thing I needed was Chloe thinking PTSD stood for "Please tell stories." Then came the moment. Chloe, with her half-buzzed confidence, sauntered up, drink in hand, and threw her now infamous grenade. "So, Ryan, you file paperwork for the Army, right?" It hit harder than she knew, because it wasn't just ignorance. It was the echo of every civilian who never gets it, every assumption that war is just buttons and bravado. I could have ignored it. Hell, I almost did. But then I saw Douglas, beer halfway to his mouth, freeze. He knew that call sign when I dropped it. Iron Widow. It was instinct. I didn't plan to reveal it, but something in me wanted that silence, that pause where truth punches pride in the face. And when it hit him, the way his jaw locked and eyes went distant, I knew exactly where his mind went. Not to the backyard, but back to the desert, to that storm, that voice on the radio saying, "Hold tight. I'm coming." The shift was immediate. You could feel it. The laughter evaporated. The air thickened. The burgers kept sizzling, but the world went still. Douglas wasn't looking at his son-in-law anymore. He was looking at a ghost from a chapter he thought was closed. And for the first time, I realized something. I hadn't just saved his life. I'd been haunting it ever since. That night, after everyone went home, Harper and I sat in the dark kitchen. She was quiet, stirring her tea the way people do when they're trying not to ask something heavy. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she finally said. I took a breath. "Because I didn't marry you to be Iron Widow. I married you to be Ryan." She nodded, but her eyes glistened like she was re-meeting me. "You saved my dad." "I saved 12 men," I corrected. "Your dad just happened to be one of them." She smiled through her tears. "He's never going to live this down." "Good," I said. "He still owes me a drink." But even after that, my brain kept replaying the past. You can't just flip a switch on adrenaline and memory. Some nights, I still hear the beeping of instruments, the mechanical heartbeat of a machine that trusted me more than I trusted myself. Flying was never just about skill. It was about nerve, about knowing the sky might kill you and going up anyway. That's what people like Chloe would never understand. You don't come home from that and brag. You come home and build IKEA furniture in silence because you're just happy to have walls around you. Funny thing, after the barbecue, Douglas started treating me differently. Not outright sentimental, but the kind of respect you can feel without words. He'd give me the nod, the unspoken "I see you." We didn't talk about the mission. We didn't have to. Soldiers don't need words when silence already says enough. But I could tell he was thinking about it, about that day, about the man behind the spatula. Maybe he finally understood that sometimes the quiet ones are only quiet because they've already heard too much noise. If I'm being honest, I didn't feel heroic. I never do. Heroism is messy. It's blood, sweat, and fear disguised as duty. It's watching the sun rise over a place you'd give anything to forget. It's shaking hands with ghosts every time you close your eyes. That's why I never told the Hazes, because they wouldn't understand the cost behind the medal. And if they did, they'd stop laughing, and I'd lose the one thing I liked about that family, their ability to turn everything into a joke, even if I was the punchline. So yeah, I let them mock. I let them tease. Because deep down, I knew someday the truth would come out, and when it did, it wouldn't just rewrite my image, it'd rewire theirs. I didn't want to humiliate them. Well, maybe Chloe a little, but I did want them to see that not every hero wears camouflage to the dinner table. Some of us wear aprons and keep the fire steady. That barbecue, the one they thought was just another summer hangout, became the battlefield where truth finally landed. I didn't need applause. I didn't need medals. I just needed that one moment when the world stopped laughing long enough to listen. And it came, wrapped in smoke, silence, and the stunned face of a man who finally realized his daughter married the pilot who once saved him from disappearing into desert dust. After that day, I looked at the grill differently. It wasn't just a tool for burgers. It was a symbol of control, of patience, of heat managed instead of chaos endured. Operation Barbecue wasn't planned, but damn, it was successful. Mission accomplished, and not a single casualty, except maybe Chloe's ego. If awkward silence had a flavor, that backyard was marinated in it. You could taste the tension between the ribs and the regret. After Chloe's paperwork jab and my not-so-subtle drop of Iron Widow, the Hayes family cookout went from rowdy sitcom to courtroom drama in 10 seconds flat. Even the mosquitoes took the night off. Douglas Hayes, the man who once claimed he could stare down a grizzly, looked like someone had just unplugged his ego. The commander was frozen mid-bite, holding his rib like it might testify against him. Chloe was still half smiling, half terrified, trying to figure out why her dad looked like he'd seen a ghost with flight clearance. And Patricia, dear Patricia, was clutching her wine like a lifeline, her Botoxed forehead furrowing for the first time in history. I'd seen combat zones calmer than that backyard. Harper, bless her peacekeeping heart, leaned in close to me and whispered, "Ryan, what's going on?" Her voice had that careful edge of a woman trying not to panic in front of family. I grinned, not a forced grin, but that cocky, pilot-level calm that always gets me in trouble. "Oh," I said, flipping a burger with one hand. "Your dad just remembered something classified." Douglas's eyes darted to me, narrowing like he wanted to disagree but couldn't. The man's brain was rebooting in real time. Patricia blinked at both of us, confusion painted all over her face. "What's Iron Widow?" she asked, like it was a brand of perfume. Douglas took a slow breath, the kind you only take when you're about to drop a truth bomb nobody saw coming. "That's the pilot," he said, voice low, "who saved our men in '07. You could have heard a toothpick drop." Harper turned to me, eyes wide. "You mean?" she started, but Douglas cut her off. "Yeah," he said, still staring at me. "That was him." Now, I don't know what part one enjoyed more. Chloe's face turning ghost white or Patricia gasping like someone had just told her carbs were back on the banned list. Chloe stammered, "You're kidding, right?" I smiled, casually flipping another burger. "Nope. Still not funny, though." The spatula sizzled, and for once, the silence felt earned. Douglas looked at me with this weird mix of shock, respect, and maybe a little shame. The kind of look you give someone you've spent years underestimating. Patricia set her drink down, trembling just enough to make the ice clink. "Wait, you mean to tell me our Ryan, the one who helps with the recycling, was that Iron Widow?" she asked, her voice cracking on that. Douglas nodded slowly, eyes never leaving mine. "That's him. The pilot command said was MIA for 2 days. The one who flew through the storm." He swallowed. "The one who didn't listen to orders." Chloe looked like she wanted to melt into the grass. Wow," she muttered. "I didn't know." "Don't worry," I said. "Classified tends to mean that." I took a sip of my beer. "Now, who wants extra smoke on theirs?" No one laughed. Even the dog stopped panting. It was glorious. Patricia finally found her voice. "Why didn't you say anything?" she demanded. "All these years, we've been judging me." I offered. She blinked, caught. "Well, yes, but why didn't you correct us?" I shrugged. "Didn't seem worth it. I figured if I told you, you'd just start asking me to give motivational speeches at brunch." That got a nervous laugh from Harper, but everyone else was still too stunned to function. Douglas finally spoke again, quieter this time. "You broke 2 ribs landing that bird, didn't you?" he asked. His tone wasn't that of a father-in-law. It was a soldier talking to another. I met his eyes. "Yeah," I said. "Could have been worse. I still had all 12 of your guys breathing when I hit the tarmac." He nodded once, tight-lipped, eyes glassy. "I never forgot that voice over the comms," he said. "Didn't think I'd ever meet it again, let alone at my daughter's wedding years later." "Small world," I said. "And you still managed to make it smaller at every barbecue." For the first time ever, Douglas cracked a smile. Small, controlled, but real. "You always were cocky," he said. "You always were loud." I shot back. That broke the ice. Harper exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a decade. Patricia blinked back tears she swore were just from the smoke. Chloe shuffled awkwardly, clutching a plate she clearly didn't need anymore. So, Patricia said finally, her voice regaining its usual high pitch. Our son-in-law's a war hero, and we've been calling him Paper Boy. She turned to Douglas, smacking his shoulder. You let me embarrass us for 5 years. You were doing fine without me, Douglas muttered. I almost lost it right there. Chloe cleared her throat. So, when you said you fly, you meant real planes? Yep, I said. Big, noisy ones. Not the kind that drop off Amazon packages. She winced. I'm sorry, Ryan. I was ignorant. I suggested. Yeah, she sighed. That. Don't worry, I said. Ignorance is curable. Just takes a little altitude. Even Douglas chuckled at that. As the tension started to fade, the air filled with a different kind of silence. One that wasn't about shock, but respect. Patricia started gathering plates, mumbling something about rethinking the seating chart for next Thanksgiving. Harper slipped her arm around my waist. You could have told me, she whispered. You married me, not my call sign, I said. Besides, I liked being your boring husband. Easier that way. She smiled up at me. I don't think boring is the word I'd use. Heroic then? Sarcastic, she said. Still heroic, I replied. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I stood by the dying grill, the smoke curling lazily into the dark. Douglas walked over, carrying 2 beers. He handed me one. You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't gone in? He asked. Every day, I said. But not for long. Regret's a waste of fuel. He nodded, thoughtful. You know, he said, when I found out Harper was marrying a pilot, I thought, here we go, I groaned. No, he said, chuckling. I thought she was marrying a guy who'd bail when things got tough. Turns out, she married the only man I know who doesn't know how to quit. You just realized that? I asked. Better late than never, he said. Besides, humility isn't my strong suit. No kidding, I said, raising my beer. To humility, then, yours on backorder. He clinked his bottle against mine and actually laughed. You're a pain in the ass, Blake, he said. You're not wrong, Commander. We stood there in the quiet backyard, 2 men who'd both seen too much pretending we were just talking about grilling techniques. The smoke drifted between us like a ghost of the past, curling and fading into nothing. You know, Douglas said after a while, Patricia's gonna start telling everyone our son-in-law's a national treasure. That'll make Christmas fun, I said. Guess I'll have to start charging for autographs. You've got jokes now, huh? He said. Always did, I replied. You were just too busy grunting to notice. He laughed again, this time louder, freer. And for the first time since I'd joined that family, I realized something important. Douglas Hayes didn't hate me. He just didn't know me. The man respected battle scars, not wedding rings. And now that he finally knew both, I wasn't the enemy anymore. When I went back inside, Harper was cleaning up. Chloe was helping, trying to earn redemption through dish soap. Need a hand? I asked. Chloe looked up sheepishly. I think I owe you more than that, she said. You saved my dad. I shrugged. I saved a team. He just happened to be the loudest one on it. Still, she said, I'm sorry. For all the jokes. You weren't wrong, I said. I do file paperwork sometimes. She tilted her head. Missiles count as paperwork. They do when you sign them. That earned the first genuine laugh I'd ever heard from her. You're scary, Ryan. You're just realizing that. By the time everyone left, the air had softened. The backyard, once full of noise and laughter and judgment, was now just quiet, peaceful, even. The kind of peace you get after a long, overdue truth finally lands. I sat on the porch steps, watching the smoke drift away, and thought about how fast life can shift. One moment you're the family joke, the next you're the guy who flew through hell and came back with extra burgers. Harper came out, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. You okay? She asked. Always, I said. You sure? Yeah. Just thinking how smoke always clears, eventually. She leaned her head on my shoulder. They'll never tease you again, you know. I smiled. Oh, they will. Just with more respect. As the last ember died in the grill, I realized the truth. Sometimes silence isn't strength, it's survival. You keep quiet not because you're weak, but because you know one day, the truth will roar louder than any defense you could ever make. Tonight, it did. And the best part? I didn't even have to raise my voice. The Hayes barbecue would never be the same again. Smoke, silence, and a side of reality, all served fresh off the grill. If you've never had someone apologize to you while holding a tray of muffins like it's a peace treaty, you haven't truly lived. The morning after the great barbecue revelation, I woke up to the smell of burnt coffee and the faint sound of guilt knocking on my front door. I shuffled downstairs in my old Flight Academy t-shirt, the one Harper always steals when she's cold, even though we both know it's emotional theft, and opened the door to find Chloe Hayes, my sister-in-law, standing there like a sinner at confession. She held a basket of muffins so big it looked like she was bribing a small army. "You're really a combat pilot?" she asked before I could even say good morning. Her tone was somewhere between awe, regret, and mild panic, like she'd just realized the guy she used to mock might also know how to call in an airstrike. I leaned against the doorframe, sipping my coffee like a man who finally had the upper hand. "Yep, real planes. No paper clips." She blinked, nodding way too fast. "And you saved Dad's team?" "Just doing my job," I said. I didn't need to flex. The silence was doing it for me. "Wow," she whispered. "I thought you were like admin support or something." "I am," I said, keeping a straight face. "I just file paperwork with missiles." She nearly choked on her own guilt. That's when Douglas walked in through the side door, because, apparently, retired SEALs don't believe in knocking. He had that smug grin that only veterans get after being proven wrong. "He's being modest," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder hard enough to rearrange my spine. "He flew under radar, saved 12 men, and broke 2 ribs landing. The man's a damn machine." I shot him a look. "So you do remember?" He grinned. "Hard to forget the guy who dragged my sorry ass out of a desert." Patricia appeared behind him, robe tied tight, eyes wide as she processed the conversation like it was a daytime drama. "Douglas Hayes, you mean to tell me you never told us that?" she demanded. "Didn't want to make Thanksgiving awkward," he said with a shrug. "Too late for that," I muttered. Harper came downstairs then, hair messy, face still soft from sleep. "What's going on?" she mumbled. "Apology tour," I said, pointing at Chloe's muffin basket. "Stage 1, carbohydrates." Chloe groaned. "Oh my God, will you ever let this go?" "Nope," I said cheerfully. "I waited 5 years for this." Patricia stepped forward, ever the dramatic matriarch. "Ryan, I owe you an apology too," she said, hands clasped like she was addressing the Pope. "We may have underestimated you." "May have?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You called me civilian support staff in front of your bridge club." She gasped. "You heard that?" "Oh yeah," I said, sipping my coffee. "I was in the kitchen. Great acoustics in your house." Douglas chuckled, clearly enjoying the rare moment of watching his family squirm. "Told you not to underestimate quiet men," he said. "They're usually the ones with stories." Patricia gave him a glare sharp enough to cut steak. "You're enjoying this." "Damn right I am," he said. "You all teased this man for years, and he never said a word." "That's discipline." "Or patience," Harper said, wrapping her arm around me. "Or fear of being disowned," I added. Everyone laughed, awkwardly, but it was progress. We all sat down in the living room like it was a post-mission debrief. Chloe pushed the muffin basket toward me. "Pick one," she said. "They're apology-flavored." I picked a blueberry one, tore it in half, and nodded. "Tastes like regret." "Nice touch." She rolled her eyes but smiled. "Okay, fine, I deserve that." "You deserved worse," I said. "But I'm a forgiving man." Patricia sighed. "So what now? Are we supposed to salute you at dinner?" "No," I said. "Just maybe stop introducing me like I fly drones for DoorDash." Harper sat back, smirking. "You realize they're all going to overcompensate now, right?" she whispered to me. "Yeah," I said. "I give it a week before someone knits me a flag." Douglas leaned forward. "You know, son," I should have told them. "But I figured it was your story to tell." "You figured wrong," I said. "It's a hell of a lot funnier this way." The next few days were weird, like living in an alternate universe where I suddenly mattered at family functions. Patricia called me captain for the first time, like we were on a cruise. Harper's uncle started texting me random military memes. Even Chloe texted me, "Do you still have your flight suit?" Which, coming from her, was progress. Douglas invited me over for men's night, which apparently meant beer, cigars, and him pretending not to ask questions about classified missions. "So," he said one evening, exhaling smoke like a wise old cliché, "what's it like up there?" I smirked. Quiet. Peaceful. No family drama. He laughed so hard he nearly choked. You're all right, kid, he said, handing me another beer. Didn't think you had that edge in you. You weren't looking, I said. You were too busy guarding the grill. Patricia, on the other hand, began her own redemption campaign. Suddenly, she was inviting me to lunch, asking about my career milestones, and baking desserts that didn't taste like resentment. One afternoon, she even said, You know, Ryan, I think we misjudged you. I grinned. You think? All right, she said, we did misjudge you. Don't worry, I said. I like low expectations. Makes it easier to impress people. You're insufferable, she said, smiling despite herself. And yet, I replied, you keep baking for me. Chloe's transformation was the funniest part. She went from eye-rolling skeptic to my accidental hype woman. At family dinners, she'd tell everyone, You know Ryan flew rescue missions, right? Like she was my PR rep. Once, at a coffee shop, I heard her bragging to a friend, My brother-in-law's a legend. I nearly spit out my latte. When she caught me, she turned red. Don't get smug, she said. I still think you're a dork. You think a lot of things, I said. Most of them wrong. But here's the thing. Beneath all the teasing and late apologies, something shifted. Douglas started calling me son, without irony. Patricia stopped looking at me like I was a questionable life choice. And Chloe? She stopped joking and started listening. Turns out, they weren't malicious. Just blind. People like them live in small worlds, safe, suburban bubbles where war is something that happens on TV between commercial breaks. They didn't know what it meant to live with ghosts or gratitude. And now they did. A week later, Douglas dropped by again. He had that look, the same one he had back in the desert, when he realized the mission might actually succeed. You know, he said, I've spent years being the hero in my stories. Feels good to know someone else gets the credit for once. Don't worry, Commander, I said. You can still have the dramatic monologues. He laughed. Deal. Then he handed me a small, worn patch, his old unit insignia. Keep it, he said. Consider it an overdue thank you. I turned it over in my hands. The stitching frayed, the colors faded. You sure? I asked. Yeah, he said. It's been collecting dust. Looks better on a man who's still earning his stripes. When he left, Harper found me staring at it. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. Just realizing this is the weirdest apology I've ever gotten. She smiled. At least it's sincere. Yeah, I said. But muffins were easier to digest. The following weekend, we all had dinner together. No tension, no jokes, no backhanded compliments. Just laughter. Chloe even asked me to say grace. I smirked. You sure you want the guy with missiles to bless the food? Douglas chuckled. Go on, Captain. So I did. Lord, thank you for family, forgiveness, and the fact that Chloe didn't burn the rolls this time. Everyone laughed, even Patricia. It felt normal. Finally, that night, as we said goodbye, Chloe hugged me. Really hugged me. Not the stiff, I guess we're related kind. You're a good man, Ryan, she said. Don't let it go to your head. Too late, I said. Already there. She laughed and walked away shaking her head. Harper leaned into me, whispering, You love this, don't you? Absolutely, I said. I waited years for this redemption arc. And as I closed the door that night, I couldn't help but think, respect doesn't always land on schedule. Sometimes it circles the runway for years before finally touching down. But when it does, it's worth every second of turbulence. You know how they say good things take time? Yeah, well, respect in the Hayes family took so long to land it probably needed air traffic control clearance. One day I was Harper's husband who plays pilot, and the next, I was Captain Ryan Blake, Iron Widow, savior of the SEALs. The switch was so dramatic I half expected a theme song to play every time I walked into their house. The same people who used to ignore me at family dinners were suddenly pulling chairs for me, asking about missions they didn't have clearance to even Google. It was surreal. Harper's cousins, those loud 20-somethings who once debated whether I really flew planes or just helped out at the airport, were now begging for selfies like I was a celebrity. Can you do the pilot pose? One of them asked. You know, like in Top Gun? Sure, I said. If you can do the taxpayer pose, you paid for my fuel. They laughed, but I wasn't kidding. I'd been invisible to this family for years. Now I was the golden ticket to their patriotic fantasies. Harper just sat there watching me with that smirk she does when she knows I'm both amused and mildly disgusted. Even Patricia, the queen of passive aggression, started acting like she was my campaign manager. One afternoon she dropped off a pie. Yes, an actual homemade pie. And it didn't taste like regret or judgment for once. "I thought you might enjoy something sweet," she said, smiling like she hadn't spent 5 years pretending I was furniture. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "No occasion," she said quickly, then hesitated. "Just appreciation." I took a bite. "Not poisoned," she gasped. "Ryan, hey, just checking," I said, grinning. "Old habits." She rolled her eyes but smiled. For Patricia, that was basically a declaration of love. Then there was Douglas. The man had done a full 180. He went from treating me like a civilian intern to introducing me to strangers as the finest damn pilot I ever knew. "You want whiplash? Try hearing your father-in-law brag about you after years of mockery." One day, he even asked me to come over early before a family dinner. "Need a hand with the grill?" I asked. "No," he said. "Need advice." I nearly dropped my coffee. "Advice?" "Yeah," he said. "Nora's thinking about joining the Air Force." I figured you'd know what to tell her. Nora, his niece. The same one who once asked me if flying made your ears pop. "Wow," I said. "You trust me with career advice now?" He grunted. "I trust you more than the recruiter." "That's fair," I said. "Recruiters have better marketing." We sat in his garage, Douglas's sacred man cave filled with medals, half-finished projects, and the unmistakable smell of WD-40 and pride. "You know," he said, polishing a wrench like it was symbolic. "I didn't respect you at first. Thought you were soft." "You weren't wrong," I said. "I moisturize." He laughed, shaking his head. "Nah, I just didn't get it. You didn't brag. You didn't bark. I thought that meant you didn't have backbone. But you were just steady. Quiet steady." "That's one way to say boring," I replied. "No," he said, meeting my eyes. "That's one way to say reliable." Coming from Douglas Hayes, that was basically a night ship. Later that night, we sat around the dinner table. No tension, no mockery, just laughter and stories. Patricia even poured me the good wine. Chloe was scrolling through her phone, and suddenly she said, "Oh my God, Ryan, did you know there's a Reddit thread about you?" "Please tell me you're kidding," I said. "Nope," she said, grinning. "Some old SEAL wrote a post about the Iron Widow extraction pilot. It's gone viral. You're like a legend now." Douglas puffed up like a proud dad. "Damn right he is." I covered my face. "Fantastic. I'm internet famous. My life's complete." Harper laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. "Oh, come on, hero. Enjoy it." "Nah," I said. "The last time I went viral, it was food poisoning." But beneath all the jokes, something had changed for real. For the first time, I wasn't a background extra in my own marriage's family saga. I was part of the story, respected, appreciated, even admired. It was strange, though, because the thing I'd spent years not talking about was suddenly all they wanted to talk about. Every visit turned into an impromptu Q&A session. "So, did you ever fly over enemy lines? What's the scariest thing that happened? Did you really break ribs and keep flying? Can you teach me how to land a plane?" "Yeah, sure. In about 10 years," I'd say, grinning. I didn't mind the questions. Okay, I minded some. But I could tell they were finally seeing me as more than Harper's husband. I'd gone from background noise to main character. Harper noticed too. One night, while we were driving home from another family dinner that didn't end in passive-aggressive chaos, she reached over and rested her hand on mine. "You seem lighter," she said. "Lighter?" "Yeah," she smiled. "Like the weight's off. You're finally being seen." I chuckled. "Took them 5 years and one classified confession, but yeah." "You earned it," she said softly. "You didn't need to prove anything, but I'm glad they finally get it." "I'm glad too," I said. "Now maybe they'll stop asking me to bring paper plates." A few days later, I got a call from Douglas. "You free tonight?" he asked. "Depends," I said. "Are we grilling or having a heart-to-heart?" "Both," he said. "Bring beer." I showed up to find him sitting on the porch, looking out at the sunset with that haunted butt content look old soldiers get. "You ever miss it?" he asked. "Flying," I said. "Every day, but I like sleeping without sand in my teeth." He nodded. "You know, I used to think retirement was peace. Turns out it's just quieter noise." "Yeah," I said. "Peace is overrated. Boring as hell." He laughed. "You're a strange man, Blake. You raised a strange daughter. I said. He clinked his bottle against mine. Fair. The weirdest part about respect arriving late is that it doesn't come quietly. It's loud, obvious, overcompensating. Patricia started introducing me to strangers as our son-in-law, the pilot hero. Chloe bought me a mug that said, "Warning, may drop truth bombs." Even Nora gave me a hand-drawn card that said, "You're cool, Uncle Iron Widow." I kept it on the fridge, partly because it was sweet, partly because it would annoy Patricia that her art piece got replaced by a crayon jet. Eventually, even Douglas started opening up more. One night, he confessed, "You know, when I realized it was you who saved us, I felt ashamed." "Why?" I asked. "Because," he said quietly, "I'd been mocking the man who once saved my life. That's not something you come back from easy." "You just did," I said. "Took a few burgers, but I forgive you." He chuckled. "Guess I owe you more than beer." "Yeah," I said, "but I'll take beer anyway." Harper loved seeing it, her dad and me finally getting along. One evening, she caught us watching an old war movie together. "You two bonding over explosions?" she teased. "No," Douglas said, "just comparing accuracy. They got the flight physics all wrong." I smirked. "Yeah, and the dialogue's too coherent." She rolled her eyes. "You're both impossible." "That's called chemistry," I said. "Stockholm Syndrome," she countered. But if I'm being honest, respect came with its own kind of pressure. Suddenly, everyone looked at me differently. Like I was this flawless example of courage. Like I hadn't had nights where my hands shook, or days where I questioned everything. They wanted the myth, not the man. So I played along, told them the funny versions of stories, skipped the dark parts. It was easier that way. Let them keep their hero. The truth, that I was just a man who did his job and got lucky, didn't fit as nicely into family dinners. Still, there was something healing about it. The jokes stopped being cruel and started being affectionate. Chloe once teased, "Hey, Iron Widow, need help parallel parking?" And I said, "Yeah, because my F-22 didn't come with backup cameras." Everyone laughed. Even I did. It was the kind of laughter that comes from comfort, not condescension. For once, I belonged, not because of medals or missions, but because they finally saw me. A month later, Douglas pulled me aside after dinner. "You know," he said, "I should have said something years ago." "About what?" I asked. "About what you did. About who you are. I should have told them sooner." I smiled. "Relax. If I wanted glory, I'd have gone into politics." He laughed. "Still, I'm proud. You earn more than jokes." I raised my beer. "And yet, the jokes were character building." He nodded. "You handled it better than I would have." "That's because I'm better looking," I said. He burst out laughing, almost spilling his drink. When we left that night, Harper looked at me and said, "You know, it took them a while, but they got there." I smiled, watching Douglas wave from the porch. "Yeah," I said. "Respect lands late, but at least it lands." And as we drove home, windows down, radio low, I thought about how far we'd come, from mockery to mutual admiration. The mission wasn't just survival anymore. It was acceptance. And for the first time in years, it felt like the sky had finally cleared. When Harper announced she was hosting another family barbecue, I swear I heard thunder, and not the natural kind. It was the sound of my PTSD waking up and saying, "Oh, we're doing that again." The last cookout had turned into a classified history lesson, a live-action redemption arc, and a whole lot of emotional smoke. But this time, it felt different. Douglas had been treating me like an equal ever since the big reveal. Patricia was pretending she'd always liked me, and Chloe was, well, trying. Which was impressive considering trying was a foreign language to her. I told Harper, "You know this means your dad's gonna hand me the tongs like it's a passing of command, right?" She smirked. "Good. You've earned it, Captain." I leaned in. "Yeah, but if he salutes me again, I'm charging him rent." The day of the barbecue was unusually calm. Blue skies, light breeze, no underlying family judgment wafting through the air. I set up the grill while Douglas hovered nearby like a mission supervisor, arms crossed, inspecting every move. "You're using charcoal?" he asked. "Of course," I said. "You want flavor or speed?" "Flavor," he admitted. "Good answer, Captain," I said, smirking. "Permission to proceed?" He rolled his eyes but cracked a grin. Permission granted. It was our new thing, mock military banter, half serious, half sarcastic. Patricia walked out carrying a tray of deviled eggs like they were medals of honor. I made extra this time, she said, smiling proudly. So no one complains. We've all grown so much, I said. Last time, I thought you were going to report me to HR for my apron. She gave me a playful swat with a napkin. Progress. Then there was Chloe. She arrived late, as usual, but for once, she didn't start with a joke. Need help with the burgers? She asked, hovering awkwardly near the grill. No, I said. This is a military operation. Stay in civilian territory. Copy that, she said, mock saluting. At ease, Private Muffin Basket. Oh my God, she groaned, laughing. You're never going to drop that nickname, are you? Never, I said. It's a permanent rank. Even little Nora, Chloe's daughter, was running around the yard wearing aviator sunglasses 2 sizes too big, shouting, Uncle Ryan is Iron Man. I bent down and whispered, Close enough, kiddo. Just fewer lawsuits. Harper floated between everyone like the calm and the chaos, refilling drinks, managing small talk, keeping the peace, as usual. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She asked, catching me smirking at Douglas, who was trying to figure out my grill settings like they were top secret. What? Watching your dad admit I know my way around fire. Yeah, it's therapeutic. She leaned in. You know he told the neighbors about you, right? Really? Yeah, she said, grinning. Apparently, you're the humble hero who prefers grilling to glory. Sounds like a Hallmark movie, I said. We should sell the rights. Douglas finally gave up his inspection and sat down, motioning to me. Blake, he said, you're in charge of the grill from now on. I've seen the light. What? Propane can't compete with charcoal. No, he said. You can actually cook without burning the meat or the guests. High praise, Commander. He chuckled. Don't let it go to your head. Oh, it's already there, I said. I'm thinking of having medals printed on my apron. Patricia overheard and laughed. Don't encourage him, Douglas. His ego's going to need its own chair. It already has one, Harper said, pointing to me. Hey, I protested. Confidence is just self-respect with better posture. As the afternoon rolled on, the air felt lighter than it ever had before. The usual tension, the sarcastic digs, gone. It felt like family. Loud, slightly chaotic, but warm. Douglas even started telling stories about me, which was new. So there we were, pinned down, visibility 0, and I swear to God, we thought we were done, he told Harper's cousins. Then this voice crackles over the radio. Calm as Sunday morning, says, hold tight. I see you. We all thought it was a joke. And then, Chloe asked, hanging on his every word. And then, Douglas said, pointing his beer at me. This lunatic flies in through a sandstorm like he's got a death wish and pulls us out one by one. We didn't even know his name then, just the call sign, Iron Widow. Everyone turned to look at me. That's true, I said, except for one detail. What's that? Douglas asked. I wasn't calm. I was swearing the whole way. Everyone burst out laughing. It was the kind of laughter that fills in years of silence. Genuine, not polite. Even Patricia joined in. You know, Ryan, she said, smiling, I'm proud of you. Thank you, I said, pretending to wipe a tear. That might be the first time you've said that. Don't ruin it, she said, wagging a finger. You're lucky I baked dessert. Then I take it back, I said. Keep the compliments coming. Chloe leaned over to Harper. He's gotten funnier since the truth came out. Harper grinned. No, he's just finally allowed to talk without being interrupted. That's fair, I said. By the time the sun started setting, the grill was empty. The kids were running barefoot through sprinklers, and Douglas had officially ceded his title as Barbecue Commander. You did good, Captain, he said, clapping me on the back. Didn't think I'd ever say that about another man at my grill. It's okay, I said. I know how hard it is to pass command. It's not hard, he said. It's just different. He looked around, eyes soft. You brought this family together today. I snorted. Pretty sure the ribs helped. Don't sell yourself short, he said. You've earned your spot. That hit deeper than I expected. For years, I'd been the outsider, the polite one, the quiet one, the guy they tolerated because Harper loved him. But now, I wasn't just her husband. I was family. The smoke, the laughter, the teasing. It all felt like a language I'd finally learned to speak. Later that night, when most of the guests had left, Harper and I sat on the porch watching the embers die out. You handled today like a pro, she said. What can I say? I thrive under pressure. You know, she said, smiling. They actually adore you now. Took them long enough. They're haze, she said. They come around at their own speed. I nodded. Guess so. I just didn't think it'd take a full recon mission and several burgers to get there. Just then, Douglas came back out with 2 beers. For the grill master, he said, handing me one. You've earned this. If I'd known all it took to get your respect was a well-seared steak, I'd have done it years ago. He laughed. Nah, you earned it before that. We just didn't see it. He leaned against the railing, looking up at the sky. Funny, isn't it? We spend our whole lives training for war, and then we forget how to enjoy peace. That's why I grill, I said. Less sand, more smoke. I'll drink to that, he said, raising his bottle. We clinked beers in quiet understanding. Patricia came out next, holding a pie dish. I saved you the last slice, she said. Douglas doesn't need it. Cholesterol. I'm right here, he said. And still not getting the pie, she replied. Respectfully, I said, taking the plate. This might be your finest work yet. Don't push your luck, she said, but she was smiling. Before heading home, Chloe walked over, carrying sleepy little Nora on her hip. You know, Ryan, she said, I think I finally get it. Get what? Why you never said anything all those years. You didn't need to. Exactly, I said. Silence hits harder when you time it right. Well, she said, for what it's worth, I'm glad you broke it. Me too, I said. Otherwise, I'd still be the paperwork pilot. She laughed softly. You'll never let that go, will you? Not a chance. When we finally packed up and got in the car, Harper reached over and squeezed my hand. So how does it feel? She asked. How does what feel? Being the family hero? I smirked. Overrated. But the catering's better now. She laughed, shaking her head. You're impossible. Yeah, I said. But at least I'm respected now. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Douglas standing by the grill, watching us leave, beer in hand, pride written all over his face. For the first time, it felt like we weren't just 2 men tied together by marriage and obligation. We were equals. A soldier and a pilot, both retired from battle, but still fighting to keep peace alive, one burger at a time. And as far as family flight schools go, that's a lesson worth teaching. It's funny how the universe loves irony. One moment you're the guy flipping burgers while your in-laws debate whether you're technically military, and the next, you're flying to D.C. for a Navy commendation ceremony that even the president might attend. I wasn't the type who liked attention. I preferred quiet victories, no parades, no speeches. But when the letter came, official seal, formal tone, the kind of envelope that smells like taxpayer money, Harper nearly tackled me in excitement. You're being honored in D.C. Ryan, this is huge, she said, waving the letter like a golden ticket. I just sipped my coffee and muttered, great. My nightmare finally has a dress code. Harper wasn't having it. You're going, she said firmly. You can't spend your life downplaying everything. I'm not downplaying, I said. I'm avoiding public speaking and awkward applause. She smirked. Same thing. Douglas was even more dramatic. He called within the hour. Blake, I just heard. You're getting the commendation? Looks like it, I said. You're damn right you are, he said. I'm coming with. You don't have to, I said. It's not mandatory. Oh, it's mandatory, he replied. If anyone's gonna clap for you, it's gonna be me. I didn't have the heart to tell him I was already dreading the idea of cameras. Patricia, of course, was thrilled. Oh, we have to get matching outfits, she told Harper. Something elegant, respectful, patriotic. I looked up from my coffee. You mean red, white, and overly dramatic? Exactly, she said. Fast forward 2 weeks later, I'm standing in a hotel mirror, straightening my tie while Harper fussed with her hair. You nervous? She asked. Always, I said. About what? About surviving small talk with admirals, I said. That's more dangerous than combat. She laughed. You'll be fine. You're charming when you're miserable. Then I'll be irresistible tonight, I said. When we arrived at the Navy Hall, the place looked like a shrine to discipline. Uniforms crisp enough to slice bread, medals gleaming, flags everywhere. The air even smelled like respect and bureaucracy. Douglas was already there, standing tall in his old uniform, polished boots, chest out, eyes sharp. He hadn't worn that uniform in years, and seeing him in it again. Yeah, it hit me. The man looked proud, and not just of himself. Patricia stood beside him, clutching a tissue before the ceremony even started. You okay? I asked. I'm fine, she said, dabbing her eyes. Just allergies. To emotions? I asked. Exactly. When they called my name, Captain Ryan Blake, call sign Iron Widow, I swear I heard Douglas exhale like a man who'd been holding his breath for 15 years. I walked to the stage, the lights blinding, the applause surprisingly genuine. They pinned the medal on me, shook my hand, and I smiled just enough to look human. The MC read my citation for exceptional valor, decisive leadership, and selfless service under extreme conditions, and all I could think about was how bad the coffee was in Kandahar that morning. After the ceremony, people swarmed. Old colleagues, officers I hadn't seen in years, even a few fresh-faced recruits who looked at me like I was carved out of legend. "Sir, you're the Iron Widow?" one kid asked, eyes wide. "In the flesh," I said. "You're a hero," he said. "Nah," I said. "I'm just someone who didn't crash at the wrong time." He laughed nervously, not sure if I was joking. I wasn't. Then I saw Douglas across the room. He was standing at attention, that old Navy posture kicking in, and for the first time, he didn't look like the gruff patriarch I'd come to know. He looked proud, not the silent, reluctant kind. The real kind, the one that reaches your eyes. When I stepped down from the stage, he was waiting. He saluted. Not jokingly, not half-heartedly, a full, sharp salute. "You made the uniform look good, son," he said. For a second, I didn't even know what to say, so I just smiled. "Don't exaggerate, Commander. You just finally found someone cooler than yourself." He grinned, lowering his hand. "That's fair." Patricia was crying now. Actual tears, not the kind she blamed on allergies. "I'm so proud of you," she said, hugging me like she was trying to squeeze the hero out. Chloe, of course, took a selfie. "This is going on Instagram," she said. #hero in the family. "Great," I said. Exactly what I trained for. Later that night, at the hotel bar, Douglas and I sat nursing beers, both quiet. "Never thought I'd see the day," he said. "What? Me getting a medal?" "No," he said. "Me being in the audience for it. Usually, I'm the one up there." I raised my glass. "Guess we swapped roles." He nodded. "You did good, Blake. You really did." "So did you," I said. "You raised Harper. That's more impressive than flying through gunfire." He chuckled. "You're not wrong." Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through some photos, and showed me one, an old, grainy picture of his SEAL team back in the day. He zoomed in on a helicopter behind them, half covered in dust. "That's you," he said. "Iron Widow. We didn't know your name back then, but we knew your voice." I stared at it, that faded image of the machine that nearly killed me and saved them. "Damn," I whispered. "Didn't think anyone kept that." "I kept it," he said. "It's the only reason any of us made it back to take that picture." Later, when Harper and I got back to the hotel room, my phone buzzed. A message from Douglas. It was that same photo, with a caption underneath. "The guy who saved us married my daughter." Life's weird. I laughed so hard I nearly woke Harper. When she asked what was so funny, I just showed her the message. She smiled, that proud, soft kind of smile that makes your heart forget how to function. "You know," she said. "He's never said something like that before." "Yeah," I said. Guess respect finally cleared customs. The next morning, we met Douglas and Patricia for breakfast. Patricia was glowing, the kind of glow only mothers get when they realize their bragging rights just doubled. "I told everyone back home," she said proudly. "You're famous now." "Fantastic," I said. "Can't wait to get recognized at Costco." "Don't joke," she said. "Someone will ask for a photo." "If they do," I said, "I'm charging per autograph." "You're impossible," she said, but she was beaming. Chloe joined us late, as always, sliding into the booth like she was arriving at an after-party. "So," she said, "do we start calling you Captain at family dinners now?" "Only if I get hazard pay," I said. "Fair," she said. "You deserve it for surviving Mom's cooking all these years." Patricia gasped. "Excuse me?" "She's right," I said quickly, ducking before Patricia could swat me with a napkin. "You're both terrible." "And yet," Chloe said, "you keep showing up." "Yeah," I said, "because now the food comes with respect." By the time we flew home, I'd gotten a dozen messages from old squad mates, a few from reporters, and one from Douglas that simply said, "You made us all proud." Short, simple, and somehow heavier than every medal I'd ever worn. When we landed, Harper leaned her head on my shoulder. "You know," she said, "you looked good up there." "I look good everywhere," I said. "But go on." She laughed. "You deserve that moment, Ryan." Maybe, I said. But I think the best part was seeing your dad there. He'll never admit it, she said. But you've changed him. Nah, I said. I just reminded him humility's not fatal. When we got home, I placed the medal in a box with the rest, the quiet kind of trophies that never make it to the mantle. But that photo Douglas sent me, that I framed, it wasn't about glory. It was proof. Proof that respect doesn't always show up when you expect it, but when it does, it can make an entire family see you in a new light. And as far as medals go, that one, the kind you can't pin on your chest, mattered more than all the rest. A year after the DC ceremony, the Hayes family barbecue returned like clockwork. Same backyard, same overcooked enthusiasm, but a completely different energy. For once, it wasn't a battlefield. Nobody was sharpening sarcasm for sport or waiting for me to mess up the coleslaw ratio. Instead, the air felt lighter, calmer, like we'd all survived something together. Chloe had texted that morning, "No muffin bribes this year. Just peace and potato salad." I replied, "Good. My forgiveness quota is full." When I pulled up, Harper riding shotgun and the smell of Douglas's famous ribs already in the air, I knew this barbecue was going to be different. Chloe was the first to greet me. "Look who decided to show up, Captain," she said, grinning. "Wow, no passive aggression in the opening line," I said. "Growth looks good on you." She laughed, pulling me into a hug that actually felt genuine. "You'll never let that muffin thing go, will you?" "Not unless you start bringing donuts," I said. "Donuts say sincerity." "You're impossible," she said. "Yeah," I said, "but lovable." Patricia emerged from the kitchen, holding a casserole dish like it was a family heirloom. "Ryan, dear," she called out. "You'll say grace later, won't you?" I nearly dropped my plate. "Wait, me? You want me to say grace?" "Of course," she said. "You're practically our good luck charm now." I looked at Harper. "See? One medal and suddenly I'm the family chaplain." She smiled. "Just roll with it. It's better than being the civilian son-in-law." "Barely," I muttered, taking the dish from Patricia before she could injure herself. Douglas was out by the grill, of course, his natural habitat. He spotted me and grinned. There he is, the man of the hour. "Commander," I said, saluting playfully. "Permission to approach the grill?" "Granted," he said, "though you outrank me now." "Please," I said. "You're the family general. I'm just logistics support." "You're still better with fire," he said, handing me the tongs. I figured I'd let the professional handle it this year. I took them, nodding. "That's the kindest thing anyone's ever said to me here." "Don't get sentimental," he said. "I still get the first burger." "Deal," I said. "As long as it's medium rare, not boot camp." He laughed, and for a brief moment, it felt like friendship. Easy, warm, real. As the day rolled on, the backyard came alive with chatter and laughter that didn't carry sharp edges anymore. The cousins ran around with sparklers, Patricia played host like a woman on a redemption tour, and Chloe, bless her dramatic soul, kept referring to me as Captain Barbecue. "You keep that up," I warned her, "and I'm making you peel potatoes next time." "You love it," she said. "Don't lie." "You're right," I said. "I do. Feels good being adored after years of character assassination." "Hey," she said, laughing. "We said we were sorry." "You did," I said. "Multiple times. I'm just enjoying the sequel." When dinner time came around, everyone gathered around the table. The food actually looked edible. Progress. Patricia tapped her wine glass. "Ryan," she said, "would you say grace?" I raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Last time I prayed, a sandstorm stopped mid-flight." "Then by all means," Douglas said, chuckling. "Let's get some divine insurance for this meal." I stood, cleared my throat, and said, "All right, bow your heads. Lord, thank you for family, for second chances, and for finally seasoning the chicken." The table erupted in laughter. Even Patricia laughed, the kind of laugh that meant she'd let the jab slide because she knew it came from love. "Amen," I said. "Let's eat before Douglas re-enlists for control of the grill." "You're never living that down, are you?" Douglas said. "Not a chance," I replied. Dinner was loud, messy, and perfect. No judgment, no tension, no silent competitions. Chloe told stories about her job, Patricia bragged about Harper's latest promotion, and Douglas tried to convince me to teach Nora how to fly one day. "She's only 7, I said. "Exactly," he said. "Start him young. Hayes women need altitude." "She's got plenty," I said. "Have you met her mother?" Chloe laughed so hard she nearly spilled her wine. You're not wrong, she said. At one point, Douglas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small coin. Old, worn, the edges smooth from time. This belonged to my CO, he said quietly. The table hushed. He gave it to me after our last mission. Told me to pass it to someone I trusted to carry it forward. He turned to me. It's yours now. I froze. I can't take that, I said. Sure you can, he said. You've already earned it. Patricia's eyes glistened. Douglas, she whispered, are you sure? Absolutely, he said. He's family. I took the coin, heavier than it looked, and turned it over in my palm. The engraving was faint, but you could still make out the word Semper Fortis. Always strong. This belongs to you, I said. Give it to your granddaughter one day. Tell her what Iron Widow really means. Douglas stared at me, eyes shining. You sure? Yeah, I said, handing it back. Legacy doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to the people who remember. He nodded, slipping it back into his pocket, emotion sitting heavy in the space between us. Deal, he said. After dinner, as the sun dipped low and the sky bled into shades of orange and purple, Harper and I sat with Douglas and Patricia on the porch. The cicadas hummed, the fireflies blinked, and for once, there was no pretense, no performance. Just peace. Patricia leaned back and sighed. You know, for years I thought you were too quiet, Ryan. I mistook it for weakness. You and everyone else, I said. Turns out it was just self-control. And patience, she added. Lots of patience. Oh, I ran out of that long ago, I said. I just started using sarcasm as a substitute. And we deserved every bit of it, she said with a smile. You handled us better than we deserved. Harper rested her head on my shoulder. You realize this is the first barbecue where nobody's fighting? Yeah, I said. Almost makes me nostalgic for the chaos. Don't say that, she said, laughing. We've evolved. True, I said. Now the chaos just has better manners. Later, when everyone started packing up, Douglas pulled me aside. You know, he said, when I first met you, I thought you were too calm to be a soldier. I didn't trust it. I get that a lot, I said. But calm's not the absence of fear, Commander. It's knowing when to save your adrenaline. He smiled. You're full of one-liners, you know that. Yeah, I said. You just weren't listening before. I'm listening now, he said, and that hit harder than I expected. As the last car pulled away and the night grew quiet, I stood in the backyard, watching the smoke from the grill fade into the dark. Harper joined me, wrapping her arms around my waist. What are you thinking, she asked. Just that this used to be my least favorite place, I said. Now it feels like home. Because they finally stopped judging, she asked. Because I stopped needing them to, I said. Respect's great, but peace? That's better. She smiled, resting her chin on my shoulder. You've come a long way, Captain. We all have, I said. Even your mom. Especially my mom, she said, laughing softly. We stood there, the smell of smoke and summer still hanging in the air, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like family. Flawed, loud, chaotic, but real. The Hayes family had finally learned to look past their own reflections long enough to see the man behind the grill. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real mission all along. Not the medals, not the recognition, but the quiet victory of finally being seen. There's a special kind of peace that comes when life finally stops feeling like a performance review. Years had passed since the infamous barbecue that flipped the family dynamic on its head, and the Hayes clan had settled into something rare, functional chaos. Harper and I had a son now, Jamie, a walking combination of her smile and my stubbornness. He'd inherited my eyes and her ability to negotiate bedtime like a tiny lawyer. Douglas adored him. He's got your focus, he'd tell me, watching Jamie line up toy planes across the carpet. He's got your stubbornness, I'd reply. That's how I know he's family. It became our routine. Douglas and I weren't just tolerating each other anymore. We were allies. Patricia had even stopped calling me, our son-in-law the civilian, and switched to Captain, though she used it like a punctuation mark. Captain, want more pie? Captain, fix the Wi-Fi. Captain, why is your son teaching my dog to salute? I didn't mind. After years of sarcasm and suspicion, being their go-to problem solver felt like victory disguised as domestic life. One afternoon, I stopped by the Hayes house to find Douglas in the backyard, teaching Jamie how to salute properly. You're bending your wrist, kid, he said, adjusting Jamie's arm. It's like this. Like this. Jamie tried again, face scrunched in concentration. Perfect, Douglas said proudly. He's a natural. I leaned on the porch railing, watching the two of them, the old soldier and the new recruit, and felt something I hadn't in years, stillness. He's gonna end up bossing everyone around, I called out. Douglas turned, grinning. Then he'll fit right in. God help us, I said, walking over. He handed Jamie a juice box like it was a medal of honor. Respect earned, soldier. Thanks, Grandpa, Jamie said, taking a loud slurp. Douglas looked at me. You're raising him right. Yeah, I said, smiling. Trying to teach him that strength doesn't always mean shouting. You sure he's related to us? Douglas teased. He's the upgrade, I said. Same stubborn core, fewer trust issues. Inside, Patricia was arranging flowers in a vase, humming. When she saw me, she smiled, genuinely. Ryan, dear, sit. I made your favorite. Which one? I asked. All of them, she said. You've earned it. I feel like I'm being fattened for something, I said. Don't ruin the moment, she replied. It was still strange, seeing her so kind. There were days I half expected her to snap back into her old self, but she never did. Maybe guilt really was the world's best seasoning. Harper walked in then, holding a mug of tea, her eyes lighting up at the sight of me. Hey, Captain, she said softly. Hey, Trouble, I said. You look happy. I am, she said. It's nice seeing you here without needing armor. Yeah, I said, glancing around. The air's different. Less judgment, more cinnamon. Chloe arrived a few minutes later, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. Okay, I have to say it. Your kid is basically a mini you, she said, scrolling through photos. He just told me copy that when I asked if he wanted a cookie. Proud moment, I said. Next, I'll teach him to negotiate with muffins. You're never gonna drop that, are you? Not even in death, I said. She laughed, shaking her head. You've mellowed out, Captain. No, I said. I've just learned that revenge tastes better when it's caramelized over time. After dinner, we all sat around the living room, the kind of scene that would have been unthinkable years ago. Patricia knitting, Douglas telling stories, Chloe pretending not to cry laugh at Douglas's exaggerated war tales. Jamie was sitting on my lap, spinning a toy plane in his hands. What's that one called, Dad? He asked. That's a Hornet, I said. Fast. Agile. Tough. Like you, he said. Nah, I said. More like your mom. Harper smiled from across the room. Nice save, she said. I'm a professional, I replied. Douglas cleared his throat. Hey, Ryan, he said, reaching into a small box on the coffee table. Got something for you. He pulled out a framed photo. Our photo from the ceremony in D.C., both of us in uniform, shaking hands. I had it printed for Jamie's room, he said. So he knows what kind of man his dad is. I stared at it for a long moment. You didn't have to. I know, he said. That's what makes it meaningful. Patricia smiled softly. He's right. You've changed this family. No, I said. You guys just finally switched to high definition. Harper nudged me. Take the compliment, Captain. Yes, ma'am, I said, saluting. Everyone laughed. Later, as the night wound down, Douglas pulled me aside in the kitchen. You ever think about going back? He asked. Flying, I said. Every day? But no. My missions now involve school pickups and bedtime stories. Doesn't sound so bad. It's not, I said. It's peaceful. He nodded, handing me a beer. You've earned that peace. Took a while, I said. Had to survive more family dinners than firefights. Yeah, he said, chuckling. And you did both with style. Style's just survival with better posture, I said. You and your damn one-liners, he muttered, but he was smiling. When we got home, Harper tucked Jamie into bed while I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet street. The house was dim, peaceful, a far cry from the chaos it used to be. Harper joined me, wrapping her arms around my waist. He's out cold, she whispered. He's a good kid, I said. He's got your heart. And your sarcasm, she said. So basically the perfect mix. Exactly, I said. I'm proud of him already. You should be, she said. He's going to grow up knowing exactly who his dad is. Yeah, I said softly. And maybe he won't have to prove it to anyone. We sat in silence for a moment, just breathing. Then Harper smiled. You know, I think your quiet strength thing finally rubbed off on them. Who, your family? I asked. Yeah, she said. They're calmer now. Kinder. Don't get ahead of yourself, I said. Your mom still judges the way I fold napkins. True, she said, laughing. But she loves you. She tolerates me, I said. That's progress. You're impossible. And yet irresistible, I said. It's a curse. A few weeks later, Chloe stopped by with a gift bag. Don't worry, she said. It's not muffins. Then it's already better, I said, opening it. Inside was a coffee mug that read, World's Coolest Brother-in-Law. Wow, I said. A mug of redemption. Don't make it weird, she said. I just figured, you earned it. Thank you, I said. This will look great next to my least liked son-in-law 2018 trophy. You still have that? She said, shocked. Absolutely, I said. It's a reminder of how far we've come. She laughed. You're a menace. And proud of it, I said. That evening, Harper and I sat outside watching Jamie chase fireflies in the yard. You ever think about everything that had to happen to get here? She asked. All the chaos, the insults, the muffins? Every day, I said. And weirdly, I wouldn't change a thing. Not even Chloe's jokes. Especially not those, I said. They built character. And material. She laughed. You're something else. So I've been told, I said. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Douglas's text came through. Proud of you, Captain. Tell Jamie Grandpa says keep that salute sharp. I smiled, showing it to Harper. He's getting sentimental, I said. You have that effect on people, she said. Nah, I said. I just make them laugh first so they don't notice the change sneaking up on them. When we finally went inside, I stopped by the shelf in our living room. On it sat the framed photo of the ceremony, Douglas's seal coin beside it, and now, Chloe's mug. Together, they looked like something bigger than trophies. Proof of a journey that started with mockery and ended with belonging. I thought about that first barbecue, the laughter, the humiliation, the moment it all flipped. I'd gone from the paperwork guy to the man who'd quietly redefined the family. Harper turned off the lights and slipped her hand into mine. You thinking about something deep? She asked. Always, I said. What now? Just realizing something, I said. Silence isn't strength when it hides the truth, but it is when it speaks for itself. She smiled, kissing my cheek. You really should write that down. Nah, I said. I already lived it. And as Jamie's laughter echoed faintly from his room and the world outside settled into quiet, I knew one thing for sure. I was finally done proving myself. No more paperwork. No more pretending. Just life, love, and peace earned the hard way.